It all begins on a desolate battlefield where a sword is embedded in the body of a fallen warrior. A relentless horde of monsters advances fiercely, spreading terror wherever they go. Meanwhile, scared and injured survivors take shelter near a massive defensive wall. A young man complains after being flicked on the head by a man who demands to be called Big Brother. This smiling man is Tematsukashiro, an F-rank hunter, who prefers to be called by his own name. The man who was hit is Kyoya Hidaka, an ordinary civilian who questions whether it is right for a hunter to strike someone without powers. Tenma mocks the young man, saying he has no idea what it is like to be a true hunter. He points to the platform where the legendary Kakeru Amamiya stands, an SSS rank hero admired by everyone. It all started 20 years ago when mysterious portals appeared and brought terrible monsters to the world. To combat the threat, the system chose ordinary people and granted them special hunter powers. Thanks to these fearless warriors, humanity managed to be saved from imminent extinction. Among them, those called the Final 11 fought with all their might to protect the fate of the planet. But the monsters had devastating demon generals, whose powers surpassed those of the greatest defenders. Cornered by the enemy attack, humanity ended up being pushed to its last line of defense. With only 5 of the great heroes left alive, the demonic army approaches to deliver the final blow. Before the apprehensive crowd, Kakeru speaks into the microphone and states that they still have a chance. An ally appears holding a mysterious glowing hourglass that can rewrite all of history. She throws the mystical artifact into the air, initiating a ritual that emanates impressive energy. A colossal beam of golden light cuts through the sky, illuminating the entire area with indescribable power. That object creates a temporal portal capable of sending someone exactly 20 years back into the past. Only one person will be able to cross this portal to try to prevent the demonic invasion from happening. People start arguing about who should take on this mission, which is so important for saving the future. In unison, the desperate crowd begins to shout Amamiya's name so that he can change their fate. Watching everything from afar, Koya comments to Tenma about how incredible it must be to have the chance to go back in time. He vents by saying that if he could go back, he would just like to see his parents' faces one more time. Upon hearing the young man's sincere feelings, Tenma puts his hand on his head with a welcoming look. Meanwhile, the outcry of the people gets louder and louder, begging for salvation through the hero. Amamiya feels a touch on his shoulder and realizes that the moment has come to accept his heroic burden. His companion smiles and reinforces that he is the only one capable of defeating the demons and saving the entire world. The legendary hunter prepares to leave, determined to ensure the survival of all humanity. Suddenly, an imminent danger appears in the sky and makes Amamiya shout desperately for everyone to dodge. A colossal energy attack falls upon the military base, catching all the defenders by surprise. Amamiya's companion tries to reach out her hand amidst the chaos generated by the devastating impact. A terrible magical explosion occurs, causing the local defenses to begin collapsing rapidly. The impact is so overwhelming that the protective barrier simply shatters into 1,000 pieces. Amamiya's ally is completely in shock to see that the Great Barrier was destroyed so easily. A huge black spike of pure, destructive energy pierces the ground and destroys everything around it. Seeing a huge piece of debris flying toward his uncle, Kyoya shouts in despair to try to warn him. Without hesitating, Tenma advances quickly and pushes the boy to save him from the fatal impact. The boy falls to the ground and reaches out his arm, watching his uncle get thrown directly into the portal. Koya falls into absolute despair, while Tenma just smiles calmly as he is swallowed by the divine light. Immediately afterward, a devastating detonation consumes the entire platform where the survivors were. Lying in the rubble, the young man cries profusely while calling for his dear uncle in the middle of the smoke. With a bruised and bloodied face, he tries to stand up to look for any sign of survival. Desperate, Kaya runs toward the beam of light that is disappearing and continues to call for his uncle. He remembers the last words of Tenma, who smiled while asking to be called Big Brother. The golden energy of the portal consumes the entire environment in a flash that blinds any spectator nearby. The system is activated and notifies on the screen that the world's temporal distortion will begin to be corrected. A floating message confirms that the return item was activated successfully amidst the destruction. That the target of the regression is set as the hunter Tenma Sukashiro, who will now go back 20 years in time. The colossal beam of light consumes the platform entirely, while the spectators watch in shock. When the flash finally fades, only smoke and rubble remain at the place where the portal once stood. Desperate, the woman asks aloud who was the person who just entered the return portal. Amamiya is left completely speechless, paralyzed with fear upon realizing what had just happened. Red system screens warn of a grave causal distortion that needs to be corrected soon. Fallen in a forest, Tenma questions the chances of a mere F-rank hunter being able to save the world. He observes his status screen and is indignant to see that he still has the same weak attributes as in the past. The young man realizes that all of it is real and that he has indeed rejuvenated 20 years by crossing the portal. On his knees in the grass, he tries to absorb the insanity of having been sent back in time by accident. Suddenly, a frightening creature screech echoes through the woods and puts the protagonist in a state of alert. Recognizing the immediate danger, Tenma begins to run in the direction of the sound to understand what is happening. He hides behind a tree and spots an armed group of green goblins patrolling the forest. The young man realizes he is inside a dungeon and curses himself for still being afraid of such weak monsters. With no combat skills, he remains thoughtful about how he will manage to survive and get out of there alive. A new red system screen appears before his eyes, showing a timer counting down. Suddenly, a sharp blade emerges, cutting through the air toward the monsters that were in the clearing. The goblins are caught by surprise and let out screams of terror upon realizing the sudden attack. A mysterious warrior executes fast and precise attacks, eliminating the creatures without any effort. The decapitated head of one of the monsters rolls to Tenma's feet, who observes everything apprehensively. He is happy to notice that there is another hunter there and decides that asking for help is his best chance of survival. But the shadowy silhouette that appears wielding a bloodied sword does not look like a human ally. The protagonist recognizes the creature as Chulin, a two-sword warrior with otherworldly techniques. This is a legendary monster with its own name, feared even by the most experienced warriors. Another hunter appears, running desperately through the forest and begging for help to escape alive. The man runs in panic, screaming that being is slaughtering both humans and the monsters themselves. Chulane appears right behind him with his blue eyes glowing under the hood, ready to deal a fatal blow. Watching that whole brutal pursuit up close, Tenma is completely in shock and paralyzed with panic. The legendary monster raises his gigantic bloodied blade, preparing to cut the fleeing hunter. He brings the sword down with devastating force, generating a trail of deadly energy that cuts through the wind. In the last thousandth of a second, Tenma leaps heroically and knocks the hunter down to save him from that lethal attack. The monster's blow misses the target and collides with the ground, generating a large explosion of dirt and rocks in the clearing. The rescued man lets out a moan of pain as he hits the ground, still dazed by the scare of his near-death experience. Tenma looks back with cold sweat running down his face, aware that they remain in extreme danger. Without wasting time, the young man grabs the survivor's arm to help him get up quickly from all that dust. He shouts for the hunter to run, and the two take off in a sprint through the dense trees of the forest. Chulane lands heavily at the site of the previous impact, opening a huge crater in the rocky soil. The monster roars in frustration upon realizing that its prey managed to escape the attack by a very narrow margin. Far from there, the two survivors run panting and exhausted while looking for a safe place to rest. Tenma collapses to the ground out of breath, lamenting that his weak F-rank body leaves him so exhausted in just a few minutes. While trying to catch his breath, the protagonist focuses his eyes on a detail on the rescued man's armor. He recognizes the emblem engraved on the arm guard and realizes that it belongs to the famous Black Raven Guild. Tenma asks if he is from that guild, and the man confirms, saying they were supposed to have cleared this dungeon. A terrible realization strikes the young man, who realizes he is in the exact location of a famous tragedy from the past. He remembers the historical disaster in which the entire Black Raven Guild was annihilated by a legendary monster. With his heart racing with fear, the protagonist realizes that he needs to find the exit as quickly as possible. Tenma asks for a spare weapon from the warrior and suggests that the two join forces to escape that nightmare. The companion readily agrees and accesses his magical inventory to take an extra sword for the young man. But before he could do anything, a sword slash appears out of nowhere and strikes the hunter in the back. The man widens his eyes in shock upon feeling the fatal blow and seeing his own blood splashing into the air. He falls lifeless to the forest floor, dropping his weapon while the danger reemerges from the shadows. Without thinking twice, Tenma reaches out his hand quickly to pick up the sword that the deceased hunter dropped. At the same moment, the terrifying Chulane leaps aggressively to deal a fatal blow against the young man. Tenma blocks the brutal attack with the newly acquired blade, but feels all the force of the overwhelming impact. The tremendous force of the clash throws the young man's body backward, making him fly uncontrollably. He violently collides with the trunk of a sturdy tree, which cracks from the violence of the impact. The young hunter falls face down onto the damp grass, completely without strength to stand up after the hit. Spitting blood, he laments upon realizing that he almost lost his life because of a single blow from the creature. The terrible masked warrior approaches slowly to finish off his helpless prey that is lying on the ground. In this life or death moment, a red notification initiates a quick system countdown. The system timer keeps running, leaving Tenma very intrigued about its meaning. The young man bitterly regrets having returned to the past, only to die in his first confrontation. He begins to believe that history would be different if a legendary warrior were in his place right now. The countdown finally reaches 0, while tears roll down the bloodied young man's face. A holographic message reveals that the causal adjustment protocol was executed with absolute success. The system grants the young man a special class ability called Talentless Adjustment. This new passive ability drastically increases his learning and multiplies all of his experience points. Tenma is perplexed to read that his experience will now be multiplied by 100,000 times constantly. For having survived the previous severe damage, he gains resistance ability and rivers of experience. Countless blue windows begin to accumulate around him, showing his new technique leveling up. The final notice confirms that his physical resistance has reached the maximum permitted level with extreme speed. The protagonist cries, remembering that he spent years as a hunter and never managed to evolve his basic techniques. The panel details that the maximum level of resistance will drastically reduce his pain and damage in combat. Feeling a sudden wave of renewing energy, Tenma realizes that his debilitated body starts to move again. The terrifying Chulane observes the young man with curiosity, without understanding the blue glow emanating from him. The hunter leans on the sword and manages to get up from the firm ground with unwavering determination in his look. The system confirms that the flow of reality was adjusted to compensate for Tenma's complete lack of aptitude. With a sarcastic smile, he realizes that the system broke the rules just to give him a chance. He remembers his nephew Kalia and apologizes mentally for having left him alone in the devastated future. The hunter decides to fight with all his might to rewrite history and prevent the boy from suffering. He raises his sword firmly, determined to use this massive evolution to change the fate of the world. With eyes glowing in determination, the young man assumes a combat stance and swears that he will emerge victorious. The system displays the details of the legendary passive, which facilitates learning and multiplies his experience. The young man finds it unbelievable to be able to master a high-level technique just by enduring a single attack. Confident with his new power newly discovered, he realizes that now he has real conditions to get out of there alive. The masked warrior lets out a threatening growl upon feeling the sudden change in his opponent's aura. Chulain leaps fiercely toward the young man, crossing his dual swords to deal a fatal blow. With total calm, Tenma raises his armament and prepares to receive the impact of the fast adversary. Their weapons collide with full force, generating intense sparks and activating the colossal experience bonus. Immediately after the block, the system notifies that he has just acquired the swordsmanship technique. Several notices appear in a cascade and show his proficiency, with the sword rising instantly to the maximum level. The young man manages to dodge and counter, attack with mastery, starting in balanced, high-speed combat. Both exchange fast blows in the middle of the forest, leaving a trail of dust and dry leaves along the way. The terrible demon warrior shows himself quite confused upon realizing that his weak opponent has become so agile. The holographic panel floats in the air and confirms that the young hunter's sword proficiency has reached level 10. Tenma is amazed to notice that he mastered techniques that would take decades of hard training to be obtained. He wields the blade with lightness and realizes how maximum-level swordsmanship has totally altered his perception. Chulain executes a fast movement and delivers a cutting blow against the side of the young man's body. The creature leaps from a great height to crush the opponent with the full force of its heavy blade. Putting all his strength into the block, Tenma manages to hold the violent assault of the aerial creature. The terrible clash of powers between the two fighters creates a huge impact wave that destroys the ground around them. With great difficulty, the young man activates his resistance and swordsmanship abilities at the same time. Tenma lets out a shrill war cry while trying to endure the incredible pressure of the monster's blow. He manages to deflect the trajectory of the enemy blade with a precise movement and slips backward. The two combatants move away quickly to reorganize their stances in the middle of the devastated clearing. Chulain lets out a sinister and mocking laugh upon realizing that his opponent is still alive and standing. Feeling his hands shaking, the young man understands that just defending himself will not be enough to win. The masked demon advances, spinning his huge sword in an extremely fast circular movement. Even pressured, Tenma manages to raise his armament in time to contain the new spinning assault. He realizes that he needs to predict his rival's movements urgently and focuses all his mind on the combat. Upon concentrating intensely, the system notifies that he has just acquired the perception ability. As expected, dozens of blue messages emerge in sequence to raise the new technique to the maximum level. The holographic panel floats before him and confirms that his sensory perception has reached level 10. Chulain advances fiercely like a dark phantom to deal one more fast sequence of attacks. The creature executes a descending blow, forcing the protagonist to dodge with an agile movement. Suddenly, the young hunter realizes that the entire environment around him seems to move in slow motion. Thanks to the enhanced perception, he manages to see perfectly the exact trajectory of the enemy weapon. Confident in predicting the attack, he smiles and prepares to deal a beautiful counter-attack blow. The young man dodges with mastery and executes a precise cut on the side of the masked creature's body. Tenma slides along the ground in an agile way, completing his movement while the monster feels the impact. He is amazed to notice that he can clearly feel even the swaying of the leaves with the wind. Impressed with the changes, the young man understands that perception is a very high-level ability. The masked warrior growls in hatred upon realizing that he was hit and wounded for real by a weak opponent. Chulain places his hand over the bleeding wound and distills all his fury against the young hunter. The creature's eyes glow in an intense blue tone through the shadows of his mysterious hood. The monster advances with extreme aggressiveness, dealing fast blows to try to subdue the young man. Tenma defends himself firmly, using his sword to block the violent assaults of the adversary. Chulain begins to spin his two swords in a frantic rhythm, creating a cutting and lethal barrier. The young hunter is pressured by the absurd speed and focuses on deflecting the trajectory of the blades. He tries to retreat to create space, but realizes that the monster continues pursuing him relentlessly. The creature's attack is so fast that it ends up leaving a trail of residual images floating in the air. Tenma feels the weight of the enemy assault and realizes that he will not manage to endure the blocks for long. He takes a firm step backward, seeking to coordinate his dodging movements to escape the danger. Upon executing the evasive step, the system notifies that he has just awakened the movement ability. A flood of blue notifications floats in the air, raising his new dodging technique to level 10. With his agility absurdly increased, Tenma leaps backward elegantly and avoids the lethal blow. The monster's blade explodes against the rocky ground, kicking up dust at the point where the young man was before. The hunter smiles upon noticing the immense distance he managed to create by taking just a simple evasive leap. Chilane growls furiously while reorganizing his armament to restart the combat against the rival. Tenma feels his feet extremely light and realizes that his current agility surpassed all expectations. Using maximum level movement, he takes off at extreme speed to strike the adversary. Confident in his new combat techniques, the protagonist advances focused and dealing a frontal attack. The masked warrior manages to react in time to block the direct act assault with his heavy sword. The two warriors exchange fierce blows at high speed, creating shining sparks across the clearing. Chulane shows difficulty keeping up with the precise attacks that the young man executes constantly. With a confident smile on his face, Tenma questions the reaction capacity of the weakened adversary. He deals a blow from top to bottom with extreme power, forcing the monster to retreat a few steps. A huge wave of dust and rocks spreads through the forest due to the absurd intensity of the confrontation. They continue exchanging cutting attacks at high speed, illuminating the entire scene around them. The creature lets out a deafening roar of pain upon being hit by one more accurate cut from the hunter. The battle reaches its most critical point, with devastating blows that make the whole dungeon shake slightly. Outside the dungeon, the sky, blue portal glows intensely under the sunlight, awaiting the hunters. C-rank hunter Yuna Shirogane complains on the phone about having to rescue rookies in such a weak dungeon. She hangs up the call impatiently, grumbling that the group's exploration time limit has already expired. Yuna puts her device away and prepares her official entry pass, issued by the Hunter Association. The hunter finds it strange to receive an emergency call for such a simple and common F-rank dungeon. Sighing loudly, she assumes the rookie hunters are just resting and activates her transport spell. The system confirms the activation of the level 2 spatial teleport, launching Yuna into the portal. Upon stepping into the dungeon, she is horrified to come across dozens of sliced goblins right at the entrance. Covering her nose because of the smell, Yuna realizes that a true carnage happened at that location. She walks deeper into the forest and begins to shout for the missing members of the Black Raven Guild. The young woman freezes in her tracks upon sighting a clearing totally destroyed and devastated by massive blows. Yuna swallows hard upon realizing that a combat of that scale should never occur in a weak dungeon. Peering from behind the trees, she finally spots two silhouettes standing in the center of the battlefield. The fearsome warrior Chilane remains, standing with his imposing posture, wielding his bloodied blade. Before him is Tenma, who, even injured and bleeding quite a lot, maintains his defensive posture firmly. Yuna begins to shake with fear, just from feeling the pressure of the monstrous aura emanating from the mysterious goblin. The legendary monster faces the young man seriously, seeming to recognize the value of the warrior who faced him. Surprisingly, the creature opens its mouth and begins to utter intelligible words in the human language. The warrior reveals that his name is C.E. Chilane and swears that he will remember the face of that opponent for the future. Hidden, Yuna almost enters a mental collapse upon hearing a simple goblin speak the human language. With a sarcastic smile on his bloodied face, Tenma responds that he will collect that death in the next encounter. C.E. Chilane raises his sword one last time and begins to dissolve into shining particles of energy. The monster disappears in a large explosion of smoke, leaving only dust and silence in the battlefield. With the enemy's escape, Tenma remains motionless in the center of the huge trail of destruction left in the forest. Yuna comes out of her hiding place coughing because of the dust, unable to understand what she just witnessed. She runs toward the debilitated young man, asking desperately if he is okay and if he can hear her. Yuna supports him in her arms and asks where the other members of the guild are, shocked by his severe wounds. She begs him to hold on and questions the origin of that bizarre goblin that spoke like a human being. Almost without strength and about to faint, Tenma opens his eyes slowly and faces the woman who came to his rescue. With a convinced smile, he whispers that he was her savior and asks her never to forget that. Right after saying the last words, the hunter's consciousness finally fades due to extreme exhaustion. He collapses inert onto the grass, leaving the rescuer totally without reaction in the face of that audacious attitude. Yuna takes a deep breath and wonders how she will manage to explain that absurdity in the report to the association. Sometime later, the scene changes to a calm environment with white lights on the ceiling of a medical facility. Tenma opens his eyes slowly and realizes he is lying comfortably on a clean hospital gurney. He sits up and looks out the infirmary window, observing the calm movement of the patients in the courtyard below. The young man extends his arm and a blue holographic system screen appears before him with a characteristic beep. He looks at his own hands and smiles upon confirming that his regression in time really worked. His list displays diverse advanced combat techniques that were maximized to level 10 in a single battle. Tenma reads the status panel with his own name and realizes that that deadly confrontation was not just a dream. The young man reflects that he only managed to survive the legendary monster because of the insane bonus of that passive ability. The description reveals that the bonus multiplies his experience by 10 million%, but it has a sealed effect. He clicks the message and notes with frustration that the special effect of his passive continues blocked. He understands that this cheat was only granted by the system as a compensation for his having no talent at all. Tenma questions whether Amamiya would gain this same absurd advantage had he returned to the past. Soon he discards the idea, for someone as talented as the legendary hero would never need such help. Sighing, the young man decides to stop thinking nonsense and focus on how to use these powers to save the future. Suddenly, the room door opens and a voice greets him happily upon noticing that he finally woke up. Yuna enters the room and comments with surprise that the medical team predicted it would take weeks for him to wake up. Tenma looks at his own bandaged hands and realizes that he recovered fast even without having healing powers. A holographic notice reveals that he just awakened and maximized his own natural regeneration ability. Tenma understands how he healed himself, while Yuna gets irritated upon realizing that she is being ignored in the hospital room. The young man asks coldly who she is, leaving the woman furious that he does not remember the rescue in the dungeon. She displays her C-rank hunter license and clarifies she was responsible for bringing him safely to the hospital. The young man finally remembers that the legendary monster decided to flee as soon as that mysterious woman appeared. He remembers that, in the original history, that entire rescue team was supposed to have been brutally murdered. Tenma corrects the woman, saying that in fact he saved her life, and she ends up accepting that timidly. Yuna says that one of the surviving hunters confirmed in a statement the destructive power of the two sword demon. With a subtle smile, the protagonist is happy to discover that someone else managed to get out of that massacre alive. The hunter sighs worriedly and states that that unexpected survival ended up generating a big problem. She explains that the association decided to cover up the case and not credit the victory to the young man because of his low rank. Tenma responds calmly that he does not care about fame, leaving the woman quite surprised by his reaction. Yuna finds it unbelievable that he gave up the golden opportunity to become famous across the country overnight. The hunter keeps his focus on the terrible threat of the demons, whose ultimate goal is to invade and dominate the human world. He knows that he cannot draw the attention of enemy spies that may already be infiltrated into human society. Not wanting to prolong the conversation, the young man stands up from the bed and warns that he is leaving there at that instant. The woman tries to stop him, demanding an honest explanation about the reason he entered that dangerous dungeon. Tenma responds with his back to her that he did all that just to get money in a fast and easy way. He invents that his original plan was just to steal valuable crystals that were left behind by the dead. The room door closes abruptly with a dry click, ending the conversation suddenly. Alone in the infirmary, Yuna crosses her arms and grumbles about the young man's extremely bizarre behavior. Walking through the bustling streets of the city, the young man observes the peaceful routine of the ordinary citizens around him. He sees merchants using megaphones and people smiling while they perform their daily activities without worries. Two students walk happily, talking about trivial things, unaware of the tragedy that will happen in the future. The hunter contemplates with affection that world full of life, years before being completely destroyed by the invasion. He finally reaches the huge residential building where he used to live during that time of the past. Tenma types the numerical password on the electronic door lock, anxious to enter his old home. Upon opening the door, he sighs with relief upon noticing that absolutely nothing has changed in his cozy apartment. Tired of everything, the young man throws himself backward onto the mattress to relax his aching body after the long day. Lying in the dark, he stares at the ceiling in silence and begins to plan his next steps calmly. The young man reflects on what he must do to prevent the terrible extinction of humanity that he saw in the future. He knows that the great heroes of the association should be investigating the recent Dead Dungeon incident. However, upon realizing that he solved the problem alone, he notes frustrated that the investigation lost its meaning. The hunter activates his system screen and focuses on the mysterious passive ability, whose secondary effect is sealed. He understands that his simple presence already altered the fate, and that only he will be able to fix the future. Tenma raises his closed fist and swears that he will become strong enough to prevent the imminent apocalypse of the planet. The young man remembers that he frequently read magazines about hunters, knowing the main events of history. Despite this, he closes his eyes, irritated upon realizing that he cannot remember all the important details. He remembers how his perception ability completely altered the way he saw the world. Determined, the hunter sits up quickly upon deducing that he can also improve his intelligence and memory. Tenma decides to buy an extremely advanced textbook on quantum physics and particle mechanics. Sitting in a public library, he plans to force his brain to study to awaken a new proficiency. The young man begins to read the complex content in a concentrated way, trying to absorb every word of the pages. Frustrated, he collapses with his face on the book and cries upon noticing that he failed to understand absolutely nothing. The hunter decides to close the book disheartened, thinking that crazy idea of his was a complete waste of time. But to his surprise, the system notifies on the screen that an intellectual activity of the highest level was detected. A huge flash of blue screens surrounds the young man, indicating that his intelligence just rose to level 10. The final warning confirms that the new intellect proficiency was maximized with absolute success in a few seconds. Impressed, the protagonist focuses his eyes on the system's screen to analyze the bonuses obtained with the advancement. The panel reveals that his magical power and his energy reserve were expanded in a moderate way by the new proficiency. Tenma realizes that he can use intelligence and perception together to try to remember his own past. The young man concentrates deeply in the library to activate the true potential of his mind. The system warns that he is accessing the subconscious by activating the perception and intelligence abilities. The young man closes his eyes and focuses all his mental strength to manage to remember everything he lived. Various memories of his previous life in that devastated world begin to emerge before him. He awakens the memory search ability that quickly rises to the maximum level. The hunter opens his eyes in the library, feeling that he finally regained control of his mind. A confident smile appears on his face upon realizing that the process worked perfectly. The young man is happy upon managing to remember exactly the crucial information he needed to find. Tenma takes his cell phone and draws the pattern on the screen to unlock the device. He sighs with relief for finally having managed to remember the password to his bank account. The hunter notes that continuing without money is the only thing that did not change after his regression. The cafe attendant warns that his order is already ready at the counter. Tenma takes the cold drink and begins to drink calmly using a straw. Sitting at the outdoor table, he enjoys the moment and feels that finally he is alive for real. Observing the street, the young man decides to hunt and eliminate all the demons that are hidden in the city. The hunter decides that his first target will be the feared growth demon. Tenma's cell phone begins to vibrate on the table, showing a call from a man named Hiroki. The young man becomes quite confused upon looking at the screen because he does not remember who it is about. He answers the call and hears the man ordering him to go help in the collection of mana stones. The man orders him to go to another city while the hunter activates his memory search. The young man remembers that in the time when he was F rank he needed to accept any temporary job. When the leader orders him to hurry up, the young man responds calmly that he will not be able to go. Tenma explains directly that he does not have money even to pay for the taxi fare. He waits in silence on the line waiting to see what will be the reaction of his interlocutor. The man hangs up irritated but decides to send a vehicle to pick up the young man anyway. Already inside the car, the hunter finds it funny, the leader having complained but sent the transport. The young man opens the system panel to analyze his excellent combat attributes. The taxi finally arrives at the destination on the limits of a forest near the mountains. Tenma walks calmly toward the portal, where the group of hunters already awaited him. He smiles upon realizing that he will have many opportunities to test his new powers. The young man advances with firm steps, knowing that that dungeon will be very useful to him. The group leader notices Tenma's arrival and begins to shout, irritated with his delay. The D-rank warrior called Kuki complains, saying the young man must take responsibility. The protagonist casts a look so cold and intimidating that it makes the hunter retreat scared. The system warns he just awakened the new intimidation ability with that action. Tenma finds it excellent to see that the proficiency significantly reduces his target's attributes. The young man extends his hand and asks if the leader could lend him some equipment. Still nervous, Kuki orders his subordinate to give any useful weapon to the rookie. The other warriors begin to whisper upon, noting that their boss is acting out of fear. The battle begins inside the portal. The dungeon monsters are eliminated quickly. The hunters finish the combat and leave the creatures' bodies scattered across the floor. The swordsman orders rudely that the porters hurry up to clean all that mess. The other helper runs desperate to do the service, while Tenma accompanies him. The young man begins to use a small knife to try to extract the valuable mana crystals. He puts a lot of effort and begins to sweat because of the extremely hard skin of the dead creature. Tenma approaches the coworker and asks calmly if he has an extra knife. The helper is surprised but quickly hands one of his spare blades to the young man. The protagonist sticks the dagger with extreme precision and force in the chest of the downed monster. The colleague watches shocked at the absurd ease with which the young man performs that perfect cut. Tenma begins to remove the monster's loot and awakens the butcher proficiency that soon rises in level. The collection ability continues rising extremely fast while he works on the body. The butcher technique reaches level 10, and the young man manages to obtain diverse red mana crystals. The other porter remains very impressed with the success of the collection, while Tenma cleans his blade. With a subtle smile, the young man puts his things away and warns that they can already continue the walk. Along the way, the two find diverse bodies of monsters down by the main combat group. The frontline hunters talk happy, thinking that today's work is very easy. One of the warriors decides to advance, but notices that the rookie already finished collecting all the loot. The swordsman is shocked to see that the young man collected the skin of the great wolf in a perfect and fast way. The system confirms the skin of the wolf demon was extracted in perfect condition, ensuring a lot of money. Besides the skin, the hunter also manages to obtain rare and high-quality wolf teeth to sell. Given so much efficiency, the warriors admit the rookie's talent and decide to proceed without delay. The other porter realizes that previous dungeons took a long time because he did not have proficiencies. The companion asks, quite curious, how Tsukishiro manages to be so fast and surgical in the service. But the conversation is interrupted when a goblin armed with a sword appears, blocking the way. The terrible green demon roars, threateningly displaying a mysterious mark painted on its shoulder. Tenma analyzes the symbol on the enemy and deduces that that creature is the leader of the monster band. Without demonstrating any concern, the protagonist holds the handle of his sword ready for combat. He advances firmly, knowing that that unexpected fight is the ideal opportunity he wanted so much. The other porter shouts, desperate, asking for the young man to retreat and not face the creature alone. He says that an F-rank talentless hunter would never manage to defeat a goblin in a real combat. The demon smiles mockingly, thinking it will have a very easy victory against the weak human. The creature makes a provocative gesture with its hand, calling the young hunter to start the confrontation. Suddenly, various noises of heavy footsteps begin to echo through the walls of that dark dungeon. 4 more green demons appear by surprise and completely surround the 2 helpless young men. Tenma's companion collapses to his knees in panic, foreseeing only one F-rank warrior against 5 enemies. The goblin leader leaps fiercely with its weapon raised, ready to deal a fatal attack on the young man. But the young man activates his intimidation ability, making his eyes glow in a vivid red tone. An overwhelming aura of power and terror explodes from Tenma's body and spreads through the whole place. The panic proficiency rises in level and makes the creature drop its own weapon to the floor out of pure fear. With the increase of the intimidating power, the monsters begin to shake and lose control of the body. The terrible mental pressure rises in level again and makes all the demons collapse to the damp floor. The whole group of enemies ends up paralyzed and helpless in front of the young man in a matter of seconds. The creature leader sweats cold and tries uselessly to move against that scary domain. Protagonist gives a calm smile upon seeing the incredible efficiency of his new passive ability. However, he hears a strange sound coming from behind and decides to look to see what is happening. The hunter notices that his partner ended up fainting out of terror with that strong presence of power. He is quite satisfied for not needing to hold back or hide his true strength anymore. Tenma activates his maximum agility proficiency and advances at extreme speed against the opponents. In the blink of an eye, he executes diverse precise cuts and eliminates almost the whole enemy group. The young man blocks the leader's attack and warns that he will use that confrontation to perform an experiment. The two begin to exchange fast sword blows, generating sparks that illuminate the dark cave. The goblin retreats very wounded and tired for not managing to keep up with the adversary's physical dexterity. The young man notes that obtaining complex spells requires much more training than his more basic proficiencies. He knows that the talentless adjustment helps in learning, but he still needs to put in a lot of effort. With a serious look, the hunter decides to finish once and for all that training battle. He dodges with mastery of the enemy blow and deals an accurate cut in the air against the monster's neck. The demon leader falls dead while the protagonist cleans and puts his sword away with tranquility. A new luminous panel emerges, warning that his talentless passive characteristic was activated. The warning reveals that his experience was multiplied by 100,000, making the young man level up. The hunter is extremely surprised to see that he reached level 20 instantaneously. He explains that he did not expect to level up so fast and end up with his evolution blocked in the system. The panel reveals that now he needs to conclude an awakening mission to be able to continue evolving. This special task occurs every 20 levels and accumulates store points instead of common experience points. These accumulated points serve to buy useful items directly through the integrated system store. Suddenly, the young man feels a strong electric shock coming from the panel and retreats with an expression of pain. He decides to leave, choosing his purchases for later. While he waits for the awakening mission to appear, the hunter calls the other fainted porter and warns that it is time to start collecting the enemy's loot. The helper wakes up quite dazed and scratches his face, trying to understand what happened while he was passed out. He gets a huge scare upon looking around and coming across all the monsters defeated on the cave floor. The porter is open, mount upon realizing that even the strong band captain was eliminated with ease. The young man lies saying that another group defeated the creatures and orders him to focus on collecting the mana stones. The two begin to work together, cutting the creatures' bodies to remove the valuable magic items. Tenma observes the young man working hard and takes advantage of the distraction to verify his own attributes on the screen. He opens a blue system window to analyze in detail how his current hunter file turned out. The screen reveals that he already possesses diverse proficiencies, maximized at level 10, even being an F-rank hunter. At the top of the panel, the information of his updated level appears highlighted with the lock warning. He reflects he cannot just wait for the mission if he wants to continue hunting the demons in the city. A new red warning emerges, informing that the young man reached with success the maximum permitted limit for F rank. The message warns that the difficulty of his awakening mission will increase significantly from now on. He is quite intrigued upon reading about the difficulty increase and tries to understand the meaning of that warning. Suddenly, the protagonist's eyes widen in surprise upon reading the reward details on the panel. The young man feels a chill down his spine and realizes that the situation can be much more serious than he imagined before. He focuses his attention on the red screen, trying to process the impact that will have on his future. The hunter is open-mouthed upon noting that the conditions presented by the system are completely absurd. The other porter finishes his collection work and turns to call the companion back to reality. The colleague observes him smiling near the dead monsters and begins to think that the young man has a bizarre behavior. The panel shows incredible bonuses, like the breaking of the proficiency level limit and the evolution of the system store. He realizes that limit break is something completely different from any common awakening mission. The warrior analyzes the advantages of the mission that will also increase the maximum level of all his active proficiencies. He gives a determined smile upon realizing that he will obtain an absurd increase of power if he is promoted to DD rank. The mission requires defeating a specific demon that must emerge from a city portal in only 3 days. The target is the dangerous growth demon that in the future will become one of the enemy's great commanders. Protagonist notes a small blue window floating beside the mission panel and becomes quite curious. The other porter calls him to go away, and the young man responds that he is already finishing arranging his things. The warning reveals that he received a rare, grade weapon box as a special reward for his exclusive passive. Surprised to win a rare, classification weapon, he touches the screen to open the mysterious package without hesitating. A huge beam of bluish light shines intensely in the cave, revealing the special item that was stored. The hunter extends his hand and holds the handle of a dazzling sword that emanates a strong spiritual energy. The system announces that he obtained the legendary soul Devour, a sword extremely powerful and coveted. The group finally crosses the portal and returns to the external world under the sunset light in the forest. The coworker says goodbye politely to the guild leader, thanking him for the opportunity of that day. The two helpers walk side by side, happy for having managed to conclude the heavy service without injuries. Tenma thinks with affection of his young nephew Kaloya, who must have only 6 years of age in this time of the past. He looks at his cell phone and smiles upon and seeing the bank deposit notification referring to his payment of the day. The young man finds strange the larger value, since the initial agreement was to receive only 35,000 yen for the work. He realizes that the guild leader decided to pay a bonus on the side as a thank you for his excellent work. The warrior waves from afar, saying goodbye to the young man, while he follows his way back with the other members. The young man reflects that the world of hunters is hard, but people start to respect him when he demonstrates value. Suddenly his belly grows with hunger, and he realizes that he spent a lot of energy in the dungeon and needs to eat something soon. With money in his pocket, the young man thinks about buying something to eat, but is interrupted by the cell phone vibrating. He looks at the screen and sees a deposit of only 4,500 yen because of the taxi discount. The protagonist is furious with the abusive charge of the driver and curses the work agency leader. Later, already during the night, he goes to a large city market called A Mart to do shopping. The hunter takes a fresh broccoli with his hands and breathes deep, feeling the pleasant smell of the vegetable. He remembers with nostalgia that in the devastated future finding fresh vegetables was something completely impossible. While enjoying the moment, the young man feels the presence of someone approaching and turns his face surprised. Is the hunter Yuna, who recognizes him and calls him by name, leaving the young man surprised with the encounter. He asks if she is watching his steps, but the girl responds irritated that she was just doing shopping. The young man explains that he was only smelling the food, leaving the girl even more suspicious of his behavior. Upon looking fixedly at the girl, the protagonist begins to feel that her face is quite familiar to him. Tenma decides to activate his maximum memory search proficiency to search his past in search of answers. In his thoughts emerges the image of the girl beside a famous warrior that he met in his past life. The young man asks directly if she has an older sister named Yuki, leaving the girl in complete shock. She remains extremely astonished with the question and questions how he could know the identity of her relative. He knows that Yuki was one of the 11 greatest heroines of humanity, known as the Infinite Archer of the group. She also carried the title of Goblin Slayer after losing her younger sister in an attack of those monsters. He realizes that upon saving Yuna, he ended up altering the fate of Yuki, who now will not become the cold, ruthless hunter. The girl insists on knowing the truth, but the protagonist responds, joking that her sister is simply beautiful. Yuna remains completely red and embarrassed with the young man's sudden comment about their appearance. The hunter plans to ask the girl's help to face the growth demon using her teleport. He asks for the girl's phone number directly, leaving the young girl even more confused with his attitude. She stammers and tries to hide the nervousness, saying that there are adequate stages to pass the contact. The young man says that he wants the number as payment for having saved her life, cutting all the romantic atmosphere created. Irritated with the cold response, the girl hands her cell phone with force directly into the young man's hand. She stares at the protagonist with a furious look while the young man types his data in a totally calm way. After saving the number, the young man returns the device and says goodbye quickly, running away from the market. The girl shouts, irritated, accusing the young man of being playing with her feelings in a very mean way. The next day, the protagonist goes to a bus stop in the city, carrying his sheathed sword on his back. He analyzes the new weapon he won the day before and is happy for it being 3 times stronger than his old sword. The soul Devour possesses the property of absorbing souls to unlock better combat functions. The young man knows he will need to learn a legendary swordsmanship technique if he wants to defeat the growth demon. The hunter reflects that to learn to use the sword at the maximum level, it is necessary to look for the greatest master of the city. He walks with determination until the entrance of a famous martial arts school to start his training. The young man knocks firmly on the door of the establishment and asks for permission to enter the place in an educated way. He notices that the passage is totally open and decides to take a silent look into the temple. The hunter knows he needs a devastating attack technique to manage to face the demon armies. The master of that dojo is known for possessing an absurd power capable of splitting entire mountains in half with one blow. The young man advances through the dark hall and spots the silhouette of the one who was a great legend of hope in the past. It is the legendary sword saint called Taiyo Karashima, one of the most respected warriors in the whole world. The master scratches his head, bored, complaining of the bother of receiving visits so early in that start of morning. He walks lazily toward the protagonist to discover the reason for that unexpected visit. The young man feels his heart accelerate upon noticing the approach of that legendary and powerful warrior of the past. The master advances calmly over the diverse papers scattered on the wooden floor of the training room. The man lets out a long yawn, demonstrating to be quite tired and without any will to train anyone. He asks if the young man is just one more of his diverse fans, leaving the protagonist quite confused with the speech. With a convinced smile, the swordsman picks up a pen and asks where the young man wants him to sign the autograph. The protagonist remembers the terrible combat power that Kirishima demonstrated in the future's battlefields. His sword attacks were so devastating that they could easily cut the skies and divide stone mountains. Despite his strength being indisputable, the legend's personality in the past was very different from what Tenma remembered. The swordsman lets out a loud, arrogant laugh, thinking the young man just wants an autograph. He begins to pose dramatically, shouting with pride that he will surely save the entire world. Tenma takes a sip of his drink, discouraged to notice that the man's personality is even worse than the rumors suggested. The hunter recalls that in the original timeline, this master died mysteriously quite early on. The master speaks presumptuously again, asking with a pen in hand where the young man wants the autograph, but the protagonist bows respectfully and directly asks to be trained by him as his disciple. Kirishima is excited and accepts the request immediately, while the young man almost regrets having gone there. Shortly after, the young man waits in a reception room surrounded by hundreds of sheets of paper with the master's autograph. As he serves tea, the swordsman confesses that he spent the entire last month focused solely on creating signatures. The man then curiously asks how the young man managed to locate him, since he only just registered with the association. The master approaches in a serious and piercing manner, leaving the young man apprehensive about what he will say next. But he just smiles crookedly, deducing confidently that the young man fell in love with his technique during the exam. Kirishima laughs hysterically again, while the young man just sighs in relief at not being discovered. Tenma plays along and asks to learn a specific skill, and the master gladly accepts, driven by pure ego. The protagonist remembers that in his past life, the drunken swordsman himself had revealed the secret of his technique. He recalls that at the bar, the master had said that anyone with determination could learn its basics. The drunken man pointed his finger, laughing and asking how he didn't know the most important attack of them all. That legendary technique, which serves as the foundation for his entire fighting style, is simply called the straight line cut. Back in the present, Kirishima is confused to hear that the boy wants to learn such a simple move. He stands up and takes a bamboo training sword from the wooden stand to begin the practical instruction. The master extends the equipment to the young man and asks him in a friendly way to hold the weapon with both hands. The hunter calmly extends his arm to receive the wooden sword, ready to demonstrate his stance. But before he even touches the weapon, the master hits him and harshly states that the boy has no talent at all. The young man complains about not even having touched the object, but the master says he can evaluate skill just by looking. The hunter is not shaken by the criticism and firmly replies that he will only know after attempting the strike. The sword saint lets out a long, tired sigh at the stubborn insistence of the F-rank boy in front of him. He decides to yield and hands the training weapon to Tenma to allow him to make his attempt. As soon as the young man grips the handle, his maximum swordmanship proficiency is activated, releasing a strong spiritual energy. Kirishima's eyes widen in astonishment at the sudden change in posture, and the young man asks if he still thinks he is weak. The master notes, intrigued, that although he looks ordinary, the boy's combat stance changed completely when he picked up the weapon. With a serious and slightly surprised expression, the sword saint turns around and tells the young man to follow him outside. They go to an open area behind the dojo where there are several wooden logs stuck into the dirt floor. The instructor positions himself in front of one of the targets and warns that he will first show how the movement should be done. He explains arrogantly that even though his technique is still at level 9, it will be a great example for the student. The master raises his arms with lightness, lifting the bamboo training sword toward the clear morning sky. He delivers a vertical strike at a very high speed, generating a strong gust of wind that cuts through the patio air. The huge wooden log in front of him is perfectly split in half surgically with the attack. He turns around, satisfied with the impressive result, and tells the protagonist to perform his own attempt. The young hunter grips the weapon firmly and raises it slowly above his head, focused on performing the same cut. But upon delivering the blow, the training blade just hits the wood without managing to cut the log, and the young man complains. The master crosses his arms, resigned, seeing the disastrous result, confirming that the boy really has no gift. Irritated by the failure, the young man continues striking forcefully against the wood in an attempt to understand his mistake. The master slaps his forehead, lamenting that at that slow pace, the young man would take 10 years to learn the technique. The boy asks if there isn't another instruction, while the master thinks about how to send him away without hurting his feelings. Kirishima decides to explain poetically, telling him to connect the tip of the weapon with the sky itself as he lifts it. He complements this by guiding the boy to imagine a totally straight line connecting the sky and the earth during the descent. The young man hears the somewhat abstract advice with a confused expression but agrees, saying he understood everything. The protagonist takes a deep breath and attempts to deliver the vertical attack once more, concentrating all his attention. Kirishima sighs, seeing the new failure, and decides to suggest they end the training for that day to rest. But suddenly, the master widens his eyes and looks back upon hearing a very strange sound coming from the patio. The protagonist attempts the attack again, channeling incredible glowing energy into his training weapon. Kirishima watches the scene in shock, wondering what exactly is happening before his eyes. The master realizes, astonished, that the trajectory of the young man's blow is becoming infinitely more precise. The master sweats coldly in disbelief to notice that the young man is evolving by leaps and bounds in just a few seconds. The wood of the log begins to give way and open up before the impact of the force generated by the young man's attack. The huge log is split perfectly in half in a spectacular way, leaving the instructor speechless. Tenma finishes the movement, maintaining an impeccable posture before the two halves of the cut wood. The young man asks if that was the correct feeling, and the master is disconcerted, retracting what he said about him. But to maintain his pose of superiority, Kirishima points to the young man and dictates the true rules of the technique. He states seriously that the true test requires cutting 4 logs in a row, not just one. Tenma accepts the challenge gladly, while the master thinks that accomplishing that feat is something impossible. The experienced warrior is surprised to notice the unwavering confidence that emanates from the young apprentice's look. The hunter positions himself calmly in front of the row of logs and raises his bamboo sword again. He points the weapon toward the sky and concentrates all his spiritual energy, focused on performing the movement. The master observes the young man's preparation, feeling a huge apprehension upon realizing what is about to happen. The young man delivers the blow with frightening speed, releasing a gigantic blue beam of light in the area. He slices the 4 logs at once, awakening the technique and instantly elevating it to the maximum level. The shock wave of the attack is so overwhelming that it completely destroys the targets, generating a large explosion. The sword saint falls, sitting on his backside on the ground, completely shocked and unable to believe what he saw. The man asks breathlessly how that is possible, while the protagonist just gives a light, friendly smile. Meanwhile, dusk reaches the city, painting the sky orange over the large residential buildings. Yuna uses her teleport ability and appears in the hallway of her apartment, carrying the shopping bags. The girl announces she has arrived, but soon receives a lecture from her older sister for using teleport without necessity. Yuki warns her about the dangers of wasting energy needlessly in case she needs the magic in a real emergency situation. The young woman tries to change the subject, but the older sister notes that her cheeks are extremely red. Yuna tries to deny the nervousness while her sister suspects that something very unusual happened during the outing. The girl removes her glasses, trying to hide her shyness and change the direction of the conversation quickly. She gathers the courage and asks in a shy tone if the older sister knows a hunter named Tenma Tsukishiro. She stares at her sister, waiting anxiously for an answer about the man who saved her life in the dungeon. Yuki puts her hand on her chin, thoughtful, and responds directly that she has never heard that name in the association. Yuna feigns disinterest in the answer, while the older one asks if she ended up eating something spoiled on the street. Later, in her room, the young woman lies on the bed holding the cell phone and staring at the screen with her thoughts far away. She begins to suspect that the young man used her sister's name on purpose just to get her phone number. A silly smile appears on her face as she remembers that despite being strange, the young man was quite attractive and charming. Yuki appears suddenly at the door, asking if she met someone, and scares her younger sister comically. The young woman hides under the covers, embarrassed, while the older sister laughs, saying that she is easy to read. Yuki approaches with a mischievous smile on her face, anxious to discover the identity of the mysterious suitor. The girl hugs the pillow tightly, revealing that it was the young man who helped her in the recent dungeon incident. She tries to minimize the situation, explaining, all embarrassed, that he just asked for her phone number. The older one strokes her hair and asks to be introduced to the young man in case things work out between them. Yuki warns that she will be away for a few days to participate in a big special mission in a dangerous portal. She also asks for the young woman to be careful and not get involved in dangerous association missions while she is alone. The older sister says goodbye and closes the bedroom door, leaving the younger sister alone again with her thoughts. Yuna picks up her cell phone again with a slight smile on her face, focusing back on the message app screen. She stares at the young man's contact information, feeling her heart beat a little faster with the memory. Back at the dojo, the protagonist observes the log half under the strong gust of wind that he himself created. The system warns that he learned the straight line cut and maximized it instantly thanks to his multipliers. The young man is very happy to have managed to master the movement perfectly after understanding the secret of the technique. He thanks respectfully for the excellent instruction, while the master remains paralyzed in shock on the floor. Kirishima bows before the boy, begging desperately to see that incredible attack one more time. The master grabs the young man's clothes desperately, begging him to show the strike one more time. He cries, saying that not even he managed to reach the maximum level of that very difficult ability. Tenma is shocked to realize that, in fact, he just surpassed the creator himself of the legendary movement. The system reveals that level 10 of the cut allows slicing even intangible objects with extreme ease. Knowing that there is one day left for the demon to appear, he plans to learn as many techniques as possible from the Sate. The master continues begging on the floor, and the young man agrees to perform a new demonstration in exchange for a favor. He says he will show everything if the swordsman also agrees to teach him his other special techniques. The young man extends his hand with a friendly smile and finally introduces himself officially as Tenma Tsukishiro. The master stares at him with tears in his eyes, quite moved by the humble attitude of the young prodigy. Comically, Kirishima leaps onto the young man and hugs him tight, calling Tenma his new spiritual master. He shouts with joy, declaring that from that moment on, the Rafk boy will be his swordsmanship master. The swordsman promises to teach all his tricks, while Tenma just begs him to let him go soon. Shortly after, the training restarts behind the temple, with large explosions of energy cutting through the forest. The sword saint demonstrates his 121st form, which creates a devastating explosive cut. The strike generates a gigantic detonation of fire that illuminates the entire training area destructively. Kirishima finishes the movement by landing on the floor with extreme class while the smoke of the explosion spreads. He puts his weapon in the sheath with an arrogant smile and asks if the young man managed to understand the basic trick. Protagonist sweats from exhaustion upon noticing that it is impossible to keep up with the movements of such an advanced attack. He realizes, frustrated, that that previous technique was the only easy exception to learn from the master's style. The hunter focuses on the floor, remembering that his passive facilitates learning, but he still continues without natural talent. At that moment, his natural regeneration passive proficiency is activated to heal the fatigue of his tired body. The young man decides that it is better to end the day of training, leaving the swordsman confused with the sudden end. The young man smiles and says he anxious is to see the master's technique finally perfected the next time. Kirishima confesses that he never wanted to be a real hunter, but that he changed his opinion after meeting his new master. The swordsman becomes extremely motivated, promising to put in the effort, and Tenma just wishes good luck to his friend. The day ends, and the golden twilight covers the building of the renowned kendo school in the center of the big city. Later, the young man goes to a blacksmith to sell the high-quality wolf skin and fangs he collected. The experienced craftsman is surprised and asks if the young man possesses any monster dismantling ability. He explains that refined materials guarantee extra bonuses when manufacturing combat equipment. The old man asks the young man to always bring more loot for him and promises to pay a very fair value for the parts. But upon looking at the panel, Tenma notes that he received only a set of very low-quality leather armor. Despite the low level of the items, the young man knows that any extra protection will make a huge difference in the battle. Walking through the streets, the young man takes his cell phone, determined to resolve the last pending detail of his plan. Yuna's device begins to ring, displaying the protagonist's name on the screen in a call that catches her by surprise. The young woman extends her hand quickly and holds the cell phone, anxious to answer the hunter's sudden call. She answers in a hurried way, trying to seem calm, but her heart accelerates upon hearing the young man's voice on the line. The young man warns that he has something very important to tell her and asks directly if she has a free moment. She thinks with humor about playing hard to get, pretending to be quite busy just to keep him waiting. But the hunter cuts her expectations short by saying that the call is to discuss the city's irregular portal. With the bucket of cold water, the mask of beauty on the girl's face begins to crack and crumble from so much disappointment. She screams furiously on the phone, demanding the young man repeat that shocking information about the monster portal. The F-rank limit mission panel reminds him that he must defeat a demon to release new power bonuses. Standing in his dark room, the young man wields his new sword and prepares himself mentally for the imminent combat. The young man focuses his look on the horizon, knowing that the time to start his relentless hunt finally arrived. The next day, Tenma meets the girl at the park and apologizes for the delay upon arriving at the meeting point. She asks if his information is reliable, and the young man guarantees that she will understand everything upon arriving at the location. The girl explains, sighing, that today they will accompany a D-rank guild to investigate that portal. She turns to say one more thing, and the hunter just stares at her, intrigued, waiting to hear her words. But she changes her mind quickly and tells him to hurry up while she walks with long strides toward the destination. The protagonist runs to catch up with her, while the other hunters of the group already await them near the active portal. The hunters of the Roman guild Mayumsaki and Taiga Sajima already awaited them in front of the big portal. Yuna introduces herself formally as a member of the Hunter Association while Tenma approaches running. The girl asks about the young man at her side, and Yuna explains that he will give support in case something unusual happens. The guild master introduces himself quite arrogantly and warns them not to get in the way of the mission. He says coldly that all the monsters there are his prey and orders the young hunter to stay away from the fights. Tenma agrees with tranquility, while the girl gets irritated by seeing the master ignore her presence completely. Protagonist remembers that in the original timeline, that entire team would be brutally killed by the demon. Upon noticing the young man's fixed look, the leader turns harshly, asking if he has something to say. The young man just shifts his look and responds calmly that he has nothing to say to the D-rank warrior. The warrior orders the rookie to stay silent and continue following the group toward the portal entrance. Yuna whispers irritated, complaining about the arrogance of the guilds that always see the association as a rival. The main warriors begin to cross the big whirlpool of magical energy and enter the dungeon. The girl asks the young man to wait a moment, because she needs to measure the portal's energy fluctuation before entering. She raises her hands and begins to analyze the flow of magical power emanating from that big dimensional rift. The hunter focuses her eyes on the device reading, looking for any type of serious anomaly in the rift. She states that the energy seems normal, but the young man asks if she is absolutely sure of that measurement. The hunter crosses his arms, confident, and warns with a smile on his face that she will discover the truth very soon. The girl finds his behavior quite intriguing and decides to follow him, even while suspecting his motives. Upon entering, the two come across a stunning nocturnal scenery under the light of a huge, bright full moon. The hunter is amazed by the beauty of the place, while the protagonist walks attentive at her side. The young man holds firmly the handle of his sword, knowing that the terrible dungeon boss must be in that forest. He focuses his attention on the horizon, aware that the growth demon is hidden somewhere nearby. The duo walks along the path that skirts the beautiful lake under the starry sky of that mysterious dimension. The guild leader turns from afar and shouts irritated, ordering them not to stray too far from the main group. He warns arrogantly that it would be a big problem if one of those rookies ended up getting hurt there. The girl feigns agreement but grumbles in thought about the audacity of that D rank master giving her orders while being C rank. The other team members laugh, amused with the situation, thinking they are in absolute control of the mission. The young man thinks that rookie hunters promoted to D rank usually mistakenly think that they will become the strongest. He knows that leveling up between the lower ranks creates a false sense of power in those adventurers. The young man reflects that reaching the top of S rank is something reserved only for true monsters and prodigies. Suddenly, the girl notices something approaching and alerts everyone about the presence of magic beasts ahead. 3 gigantic and ferocious silver wolves jump from the middle of the trees, running rapidly toward the group. The guild leader draws his swords upon identifying the monsters and prepares with pride for the confrontation. The other warriors of the Roman guild enter combat stances, ready to support their commander. The group's mage raises her glowing staff and conjures a powerful magical protection barrier over the team. A large golden dome appears around all the warriors, ensuring a solid defense against the attacks. The guild's archer prepares his magic arrows, creating 2 shining conjuration circles in his hands. The team captain advances with bravery and blocks with ease the ferocious assault of the first silver wolf. The shooter fires his energy blasts at once, creating a rain of luminous projectiles over the beasts. The shots hit the monsters directly, creating diverse small power explosions on the enemies' bodies. One of the creatures falls quite hurt and lets out a whimper of pain upon being knocked down by the strong magic attack. The guild master lets out a war cry and advances with determination to deliver the mercy blow. The team fighters deliver precise cuts to the wolves, downing almost all the beasts in a few seconds. Tema observes the combat and recognizes in thought that they would manage to clear a common dungeon without problems. But the hunter knows that the situation will change completely because of the presence of the growth demon there. The downed wolves begin to stand up wrapped in a shadowy mist, indicating the evil influence of the boss. The beast displays its sharp teeth while growling fiercely, taken by hatred and superhuman strength. The guild leader sweats in panic upon realizing that the monsters he thought he had killed are standing again. He shouts desperate, telling all the warriors to retreat into the sorceress's protection shield. The master is in shock upon noting that the beasts continue fighting, even after receiving blows in their vital points. Taiga Sajima runs desperate, while the flaming head of a giant wolf appears right behind him. The mage Mai Yumsaki prepares her blue energy magic attack and shouts to hit the enemy with force. The giant silver wolf advances without hesitating and absorbs the impact of the shining attack it receives directly. Mai Yumsaki is in shock upon realizing that her powerful magic is not having an effect against the beast. The creature shows its giant fangs wrapped in flames and breaks the protection barrier easily. Taiga Sajima is face to face with the huge wolf that roars fiercely, ready to tear the hunter to pieces. The Roman guild leader leaps in the air with his sword in hand to deliver an accurate blow to the monster. Other team hunters try to attack the wolf from several sides, but the monster defends itself with brutality. one of the group's warriors is thrown to the floor and lets out a scream of pain before the overwhelming force of the beast. Taiga Sajima shouts, irritated for his companions, to recompose themselves and continue fighting without retreating. Tenma observes the combat and realizes how the portal's demonic energy strengthens the beasts drastically. The young man reflects that the ability to evolve the monsters around is what makes demons such scary beings. The wolf hits one of the warriors with its paw wrapped in flames, throwing the hunter far with extreme violence. Eunice Sherrigain notices the bizarre strength of the monsters and asks if they shouldn't intervene to help the group. Tenma activates his perception ability and warns that they cannot afford to help anyone. A large dome of luminous energy expands around the protagonist and his companion in the middle of the forest. Other giant silver wolves begin to silently surround the duo that is isolated in the dungeon. The beasts run furiously toward them, letting out brutal roars that echo through the whole dark scenery. One of the monsters jumps toward the young man, who grips his sword firmly, ready to attack the blow. The protagonist draws his Devour sword, which immediately begins to glow with an intense blue energy. He cuts the wolf in half in the blink of an eye and receives the warning that he will gain points instead of experience level. Tenma Tsukashiro is surprised by the sharp cut of his sword and praises the power of the rare Soul Devourer weapon. Two new beasts jump furiously against the warrior, who prepares to face them with his magic blade. The hunter advances with determination and focuses his power to deliver one more powerful attack against the enemies. Suddenly, chains of golden flames emerge in the air behind the young man, illuminating the entire dark forest. The magic chains advance rapidly and wrap the wolves, preventing them from continuing to charge. The monsters end up completely immobilized on the floor by the shining bindings created by the young man's ally. Yuna Shiragain shouts for the young man to take advantage of the opportunity and finish off the trapped creatures once and for all. The young man is impressed by Yuna's abilities and recognizes that she is really worthy of being Yuki's sister. He spins his sword, creating large arcs of bluish energy that cut through the air with impressive speed. With a devastating double cut in the shape of an axe, the hunter hits the two beasts that were trapped directly. The monsters are torn to pieces instantly by the powerful blow, leaving traces of blood across the battlefield. Yuna Shiragain observes the scene, impressed, and praises mentally the surreal strength demonstrated by the young warrior. The souls of the downed wolves begin to float in the air, transforming into dense smoke of spiritual energy. The system warns that the Devourer sword began to consume the essences of the newly slaughtered monsters. The weapon's energy bar goes up, and the young man sees that the current concentration of absorbed souls reached 13%. Yuna Shiragain looks to the side, worried, and warns that the other hunter group is still suffering in the combat. The silver wolves continue massacring the members of the Roman Guild, who are already hurt and without strength to fight. Taiga Sajima points his sword toward the protagonist and shouts desperate, asking him to go help them in the fight. Tenma Tsukashiro crosses his arms and asks coldly if he hadn't warned no one to touch his prey. The Roman Guild leader is furious with the young man's mockery at such a critical and dangerous moment for the group. The next second, the arrogant warrior is hit directly, thrown far away by a violent blow from the wolf. Yuna Shiragain questions again if they shouldn't intervene, and the protagonist just observes the situation, thoughtful. After the hard battle, the Roman Guild rests exhausted while the leader suggests a break before advancing to the area. One of the warriors questions Taiga Sajima if he really plans to continue with the mission in that deplorable state. The mage Mai Yumasaki supports her companion and warns that it is impossible for the group to go forward in those conditions. Taiga Sajima retorts irritated, saying that that is just a D-rank portal and that they need to continue. He remembers that if they fail, they won't have a way to buy new equipment or pay the guild's accumulated debts. The young man reflects that hunters usually forget the real danger of portals by treating the missions just as a game. Yuna Sherigan warns seriously that the location is too dangerous for being an irregular portal with buffed monsters. Taiga Sajima confronts Yuna Sherigan and questions if she has proof that the portal is really irregular. The arrogant leader warns that he is in command of the mission and orders the young woman not to go past the established limits. Taiga continues his authoritarian speech while Mai Yumsaki begins to sweat from nervousness at his side. The mage stammers with a lot of fear and tries to call the attention of her leader to something scary that is happening. She points trembling to the dark forest, calling the attention of the arrogant warrior to the imminent danger. The entire group is paralyzed with fear upon noting two red eyes glowing intensely in the middle of the darkness. A colossal paw wrapped in a red, shadowy mist steps on the floor, destroying everything around it. The gigantic silver wolf boss emerges before everyone, emanating an extremely powerful evil aura. The colossal creature lets out a monstrous roar that makes the whole dungeon shake with its overwhelming force. The sound impact of the roar throws the Roman guild hunters backward, leaving everyone disoriented. Fallen on the floor and totally scared, Taiga Sajima tries to understand what type of bizarre monster that is. Tenma Tsukishiro crouches with caution and focuses his eyes on the terrible creature that just appeared. The protagonist soon realizes that that scary beast is the true final boss of the irregular portal. The young warrior is face to face with the colossal wolf that continues emanating its terrible destructive energy. The silver wolf boss rose again with all its strength, activating a terrible sound ability in the dungeon. The system warns that everyone entered into a state of fear, and Taiga shouts desperate with a strong headache. Tenma resists the effect and shouts for Yuna to use her teleport magic before it is too late for the group. The hunter supports the headache and asks for everyone to approach her as fast as they can manage. Tenma's system begins to rise rapidly, the level of his mindset ability to resist the fear. The young man gains resistance bonuses against negative mental effects, while his eyes begin to glow. With the sudden increase of his mental strength, the young man recovers totally the calm in the middle of the chaos. Taiga Sajima stands up staggering and says desperate that they need to get the heck out of there immediately. Mai Yumsaki extends her hand, begging for help, but the coward leader ignores her to save his own skin. The mage is left behind while she watches, without strength, her leader run in an egoistic and cowardly way. The protagonist watches the desperate escape of the leader and realizes that he will end up getting in the way of the escape magic. Knowing that he cannot let anyone escape the circle, the young man decides to act fast to contain the fugitive. Tenma Tsukishiro activates his intimidation power, making his eyes glow in a scary red tone. The crushing power of the young man's intimidation makes the leader in flight paralyze from fear at the same instant. Totally paralyzed by the mental pressure, the cowardly warrior collapses face down on the floor without managing to move. Yuna Shirogane concentrates to the maximum and activates her spatial teleport magic circle to save the team. The terrible silver wolf boss advances at high speed against the location where the group is gathering. Tenma Tsukishiro runs and holds the young hunter in his arms seconds before the monster reaches them. The beast opens its giant mouth in the attempt to devour the invaders at once. The wolf bites the floor with violent force, but the group manages to disappear from there thanks to the girl's teleport. The monster hauls furious upon realizing that its prey managed to escape its claws at the last second. Already in a safe location, the Roman guild hunters fall exhausted and relieved for having survived the attack. One of the warriors suggests leaving the portal soon, but Yuna warns that something strange happened during the teleport. The young hunter looks back scared and reveals that the portal exit rift is totally locked. Tenma explains that in irregular portals, the only way to open the exit is by defeating the dungeon boss. Taiga despairs and shouts, asking how they could defeat a monster of that magnitude. The protagonist keeps calm and draws his shining sword, demonstrating total confidence in the battle that will come. The arrogant guild leader collapses on the floor in panic while he covers his ears, trembling from fear of the monster. Tenma advances with an absurd speed, cutting the shadows of the location with impressive ease. He puts his sword away with tranquility and warns heroically that he will take care of that terrible beast alone. The young man walks toward the danger, while he leaves the Roman guild hunters completely shocked. Mai Yumsaki points horrified forward and asks what is happening to the giant wolf's body. Several black shadow claws begin to emerge from the floor and wrap the defeated monster's corpse. The silver wolf lets out a bizarre roar of pain while the shadowy energy begins to consume its body. Darkness swallows the beast completely, transforming the carcass into a cocoon of pure demonic power. The protagonist observes the transformation and realizes that demon is taking control of the boss's body. Tenma Tsukashiro observes the energy cocoon and mentalizes that that is the true target he needs to defeat. The young man knows that the creature is the feared growth demon that is about to emerge in the dungeon. Yuna Sherigan is incredulous with the situation and asks if the young man really has the intention of facing that. The protagonist warns calmly that he and Sherigan will defeat the monster together, leaving everyone in shock. The other Roman guild members are terrified and say that facing that beast with two people is suicide. Ignoring the general panic, the young man turns to Taiga Sajima, calling him by name with seriousness. Protagonist asks for Taiga's armor as a loan because he knows that the rare metal set will increase his defense. Yuna hears a roar coming from far away and asks if the companion has any real plan to face the enemy. Tenma responds in a very simple way, saying that he intends only to beat the monster with his brute strength. The girl smiles crookedly ironically, commenting that that plan is perfect to make both die. The young man draws his blue sword and explains that the boss's strengthening is directly linked to the closed portal. Suddenly, 3 silver wolves emerge running at high speed toward the protagonist in the forest. The warrior advances with determination against the beasts, guaranteeing that he will destroy all of them with his blade. Other monsters try to flank the group and run furiously toward Yuna, who prepares to attack. The hunter conjures her powerful lightning magic, hitting the wolves with a strong electric discharge. An immense yellow explosion of electricity consumes the creatures, cleaning the combat area in a few seconds. Tenma praises the blow's strength, and the girl comments proudly that soon she will be promoted to B rank. The young man laments not gaining experience points, but thanks her for her help to eliminate the beasts at once. The system warns that the Devour consumed the essences and reached 100% of its capacity. A shining alert appears on the young man's screen, indicating the unlocking of the special function of his powerful weapon. The soul release ability is activated, ensuring a huge attack in range bonus for 5 seconds. Tenma Tsukashiro smiles, satisfied upon seeing the insane power that he will manage to release for a brief 5 seconds. While the young man wears the loaned armor, Yuna points to the cliff, warning that the boss emanates a terrible aura. On top of the mountain under the light of the full moon, the imposing silver wolf boss roars, surrounded by dark mist. The other dungeon wolves begin to float and act in a very strange way under the influence of the howl. The hunter notices the tense behavior of the beasts and realizes that the boss's howl is quite different from normal. The protagonist knows that he needs to attack immediately before the demon finishes absorbing all of the boss's power. Yuna comments tense that that creature doesn't seem like a common beast, but rather a true walking natural disaster. The young man explains that a growth demon stole the boss wolf's body using its shadowy powers. Suddenly, 2 system screens emerge warning that they entered the restricted area of a demonic servant. The notification reveals that all living beings within a 50-meter radius will suffer a severe limitation. Yuna is confused upon seeing the restriction card, and the warrior warns that he will explain the situation quickly. Tenma Tsukashiro analyzes the effect and realizes that the penalty is exactly the same as what he remembered from the past. The shadowy rule dictates the race that commands the demonic energy always imposes its own jurisdiction in the location. Each demon creates a unique domain that exerts immediate influence over any invader who enters the area. Under this restriction, no one manages to amplify their powers or awaken new abilities in the dungeon. The young man thinks that the limitation is only within 50 meters, but soon it will spread if the combat continues. Yuna Shirogane is extremely worried about the situation while the young warrior keeps focused. The girl warns, scared that the colossal wolf on top of the cliff just discovered their hiding place. The terrible monster jumps from the cliff at high speed, advancing with blind fury against the two invaders. The beast falls, breaking the floor with extreme violence and generating a huge curtain of dust in the impact area. The protagonist reacts fast and manages to jump backward, saving his companion from the monster's crushing attack. In the middle of the dust appears a mysterious white-haired elf floating imposingly above the destroyed ground. Yuna theorizes that the monster have absorbed that elf soul in the past to manage to use her physical form. The floating elf extends her hand and begins to concentrate an immense sphere of pure purple magic energy. Several purple-colored arcane spheres emerge around the creature, floating in a scary way in the dungeon. The hunter duo looks at the sky in shock upon realizing the magnitude of the magic attack that is about to come. Tematsukashiro is confused for not remembering any ability of this type in the information about the demon. He realizes that the creature stole the elf's technique and warns his companion to prepare to dodge. The young man shouts for the girl to move only when he gives the exact signal for them to escape the purple projectiles. Tematsukashiro focuses totally his vision upon activating immediately his perception ability at level 10. The mysterious elf floats in the air, concentrating an immense quantity of purple magic energy in her two hands. She prepares to fire her energy spheres against the hunters who are just below in the dungeon. The creature makes a light movement with its hands, releasing the powerful, devastating technique over its enemies. The protagonist notices the beginning of the enemy attack and lets out an alert shout, so they dodge right then. The elf fires several colossal beams of purple magic that cut through the scenery in all directions with violence. The gigantic energy projectiles fall from the sky like a deadly storm, destroying the floor around Yuna. Tematsukashiro runs desperate, trying to dodge the light beams that fall glued to his body in the escape. The system warns that the young man activated with success his agility passive ability at maximum level 10. He also uses his footwork at level 10, allowing him to dodge the enemy attacks with extreme agility. Activating the Taijutsu ability at level 10, the young man executes incredible acrobatics to escape the explosions. The warrior manages to land on the floor with perfection after escaping by little from the devastating sequence of attacks. The hunter wipes the sweat from his face and realizes that he only managed to escape alive for using 4 abilities together. He looks at his armor, knowing that he would be dead without it, and concludes that the demon's strength is unbelievable. Knowing the gravity of the situation, the young man decides that he needs to attack with force before the next blow comes. The floating elf prepares calmly to fire another wave of dark energy spheres at the warriors. The protagonist runs at high speed toward the enemy, aiming to prevent her from executing her new magic. The creature invokes a protective energy barrier to try to block the fast assault of the young hunter. The warrior shouts Yuna Shiragan's name, signaling for the companion to support his movement in the battle. Suddenly, magic chains of purple energy emerge from the floor and wrap the body of the floating creature. The elf is completely immobilized by the restraint bindings created by Yuna's excellent support magic. The young hunter grips the chains and shouts for the partner to take advantage of the opportunity and finish the combat. Tematsukashiro jumps toward the heavens with his sword in hand, ready to cut the tied enemy. The protagonist enters an attack posture using the supreme technique of the feared Kirishima style of swordsmanship. He concentrates all his force in the magic sword and executes the legendary straight-line cut blow in the air. The blue light blow cuts the elf in half, generating a huge blast of power that tears the dungeon scenery. The young man lands on the floor confident that he managed to finish off the danger, but a scary noise makes him stop. He hears a sinister growl and turns around with caution, realizing that the battle is still not finished. The gigantic silver wolf re-emerges from the shadows right behind the young man, emanating a huge mist of hatred. Gasping from the combat's exhaustion, the hunter observes the creature that somehow survived the fatal blow. He concludes that the monster returned to the wolf form at the last second to manage to reduce the attack's damage. Furthermore, the colossal beast used its huge brute physical strength to break all the restraint chains. Yuna Shirogane notices the imminent danger and shouts, desperate for the companion to be very careful there. The colossal wolf opens its immense mouth and begins to charge a colossal sphere of glowing purple energy. The monster fires the devastating purple magic, ray directly against the hero, who tries to dodge the beam. Several projectiles explode the ground, while the young man executes fast movements to not be hit directly. The hunter notices surprise that the demon is mixing the elf's magic with the brutal strength of the silver wolf. The young man is wrapped in the huge dust and wind explosion generated by the violent impact of the magic attack. He is thrown backward with violence and lets out a moan of pain upon colliding heavily against the rocks. Even very hurt, the young man stands up quickly, looking for a way to reverse the fight's disadvantage. Yuna Shirogane begins to conjure another magic rune in the air to try to support her brave companion. The protagonist runs at high speed, returning to the front line of the combat with his shining sword. He executes again his straight-line cut, delivering a strong bluish blast against the giant wolf. The attack hits the monster directly, generating an immense luminous explosion that makes the whole location shake hard. But the colossal beast manages to jump backward, escaping the critical damage of the attack in the last instant. Temmatsuki Shiro retreats gasping, feeling the physical wear and tear taking its price in the middle of that smoke. The danger reemerges when another immense sphere of purple magic begins to form in the sky above the warriors. The young man dodges at the limit of one more dangerous explosion that destroys completely the floor below him. Several dark light beams continue falling relentlessly on the position of the young protagonist. He realizes that if the fight continues in a slow wear and tear, their defeat will be completely inevitable. Temmatsuki Shiro is very worried about Yuna Shirogane upon seeing her before a terrible enemy explosion. The girl begins to sweat from tiredness and realizes that her magic energy is reaching very close to the total limit. The protagonist lands on the floor and focuses his attention on dark slime that fell right before him on the field. The black puddle of energy begins to bubble, indicating that the creature is trying to regenerate in the dungeon. The hunter realizes that the cut pieces of the enemy do not return to the body, showing that his attacks work. He runs back to the battle, knowing that the only thing he needs at the moment is to finish the combat. The young man advances with everything, knowing he needs to deliver just one decisive blow to eliminate the terrible beast at once. The young man executes a beautiful acrobatic cut on the monster, making the creature growl from pain with the impact's force. The colossal beast retreats, staggering while it loses part of its power missed with the attack received from Tenma. The young man skids on the floor and prepares, knowing he still has one last super powerful attack to deliver. The system details the incredible effects of the weapon's soul release that increases the damage for a brief 5 seconds. The protagonist sweats cold upon remembering that he only possesses 5 seconds, while the wolf charges more energy in its mouth. Temmatsuki Shiro shouts, calling for his companion who is already kneeling on the floor because of the tiredness. The young man runs in the partner's direction, leaving her very confused about the motive for him to be approaching her. Without wasting time, the warrior throws the girl onto his back and runs with her, fleeing the monster's explosions. The young man asks if she manages to use her teleport to throw them exactly above the giant wolf's head. The hunter warns that she only has mana for one attempt, and the protagonist guarantees that that is more than enough. The two suffer with the attack's wind impact, but the young lady keeps the focus to conjure her escape magic. Yuna curses the companion for an idiot while she joins her hands to activate the teleport at the crucial moment. The spell is activated with success, and the hero appears in the heavens, preparing his attack against the monster. The colossal boss looks up, surprised upon seeing the duo appearing from a portal right above its head. A large geometric energy pattern appears in the sky, marking the opening of the teleport dimensional portal. The young man begins to fall at high speed toward the enemy with his sword already fully charged. He holds the partner firmly along his body while they fall toward the terrible giant silver wolf. The system warns that the legendary Soul Devourer soul release function was activated with success. A huge bluish aura wraps the young man's sword, ensuring the range of his blow is gigantic. The protagonist delivers the final blow with all his force, aiming directly at the top of the enemy's head. The young man's colossal swordsmanship technique cuts the air, creating a huge shining line of magic energy. The colossal straight line blow hits the monster directly, dividing the beast's body and the whole scenery in half. A gigantic blue light explosion consumes the entire battlefield, illuminating the forest's darkness. The system displays a shining warning on the protagonist's screen, confirming that the powerful demon was defeated. All the dark and evil mist that covered the monster begins to disappear, revealing the end of the terrible threat. Yuna Shirogane collapses, lying on the soil, totally exhausted and gasping after the end of that deadly battle. The girl observes the young man from afar and wonders mentally who exactly is that warrior so strong. She finds it very strange he being registered at F rank and wonders why he hid his real power. The system announces that Tenma Tsukishiro concluded his awakening mission and now reached the coveted D rank. The hunter approaches and orders the young man to stand up, but he jokes, saying he won't manage to move so soon. She warns Sirius that they will be in trouble if they don't get out of there soon while she points to the middle of the trees. Several red eyes begin to emerge in the middle of the forest, revealing that dozens of wolves still surround the location. The remaining monsters begin to grow furious and prepare to attack the pair of exhausted hunters. Tenma hands an item to the young lady and asks for her to withstand the monsters' attacks for only 5 minutes. The hunter consumes rapidly an intermediate magic energy recovery potion to restore her mana. Yuna agrees, smiling, and warns that the young man will have to pay for the most expensive dinner of the restaurant after they get out of there. The young man lies on the floor exhausted, commenting mentally that even a single minute of rest will already help a lot. The young lady releases a giant fire energy explosion, consuming all the remaining beasts in the dungeon. Taiga Sejima observes the scene from afar, impressed with the brutal strength demonstrated by the young lady from the association. The portal begins to close under the sunrise light, indicating that the irregular dungeon was concluded. Mai Yumsaki celebrates happily with her arms raised, shouting that they are finally saved from the danger. The group walks back, and the young man is impressed to know that the young lady defeated 50 wolves alone. Already out of the portal, Tenma gets off the partner's back, thanking for the help and warning that he already manages to walk. Tenma Tsukishiro returns the parts of the scratched armor to Taiga Sajima, thanking for the big help in the fight. Taiga laments the damage in his metal parts, while Mayumi Saki thanks the duo for having gotten out of there alive. Yuna Shirogane warns the mage to report everything correctly when the Hunter Association comes into contact. The Roman guild mage looks at the protagonist and asks with shyness for him, at least, to reveal his real name. The young man opens a friendly smile and invents the false name of Busen Gariki to not reveal his true identity. Mayumi Saki makes a bow, thanking the false Gariki, while Yuna is surprised with the partner's lie. The hunter asks in a whisper if he is a wanted man, but the young man reflects that he just needs to keep a secret. He knows that affiliating with a big guild would bring resources, but his absurd growth would bring many risks now. The young man explains in thought that if the demons hidden in society discover his power, his life will be over. The protagonist concludes that he needs to hide his abilities and avoid drawing attention until he gets strong enough. Yuna understands his motives and asks if she should omit the real details of the combat in the official report. The young lady comments relieved that they avoided a huge disaster, but questions if lying in the report is the right thing. Tenma Tsukishiro smiles thankful and responds that hiding those details on paper really would help him a lot. The girl is extremely flushed with the young man's smile and stammers, trying to hide her sudden shyness. She says goodbye, telling him to call later, and warns not to forget the expensive dinner that he promised to pay. Suddenly, the hero calls for the young lady, leaving her surprised and with her heart beating faster with the approach. She turns around quickly with her face quite flushed, asking with a lot of expectation what he wishes to talk about. The young man breaks the romantic atmosphere by asking just for a ride of spatial teleport to his destination. Yuna Shirogane is extremely frustrated with the young hunter's lack of social awareness and looks at him irritated. Without patience, she activates her magic and teleports the partner back at the same instant with an angry expression. The next day, the sun shines strong over the condominium where the young man's humble apartment is located. The hero wakes up stretching on the bed while the system activates his natural recovery power at level 10. He smiles, very satisfied upon noting the absurd effect of that extremely cheated passive ability of his. The warrior sees that he gained 35% of power progress just for having a good night's sleep. He celebrates for having defeated the demon and reached D rank, releasing the level limit of his proficiencies. Suddenly, the young man's cell phone begins to vibrate on the sheets, calling the young man's attention on the bed. Upon looking at the screen, the warrior notes that he has 4 missed calls from the manager of his old employment agency. The young man smiles crookedly, resolved to ignore the call because he does not intend to accept any more odd jobs. He decides to open his blue inventory screen to analyze the rewards that he obtained in the last dungeon. The hunter takes out of the inventory a large and shining high purity yellow magic energy crystal. He evaluates that the gem must be worth about 500,000 yen on the market, even coming from a D-rank portal. The system screen shines, announcing that he concluded the special unlocking mission upon defeating the demon. The warrior is very impressed upon noting the emergence of a new and mysterious spiritual commerce tab. The notification explains the store's functioning rules that convert dungeon points into divine items. He notes that only the consumable potion section is open and wonders if weapons will be added later. Analyzing the products, he sees that the treasure acquisition potion costs exactly 500 points. The hunter reflects confident, knowing the system would never give him an option that left him at a disadvantage. Without hesitating, the young man decides to spend all his accumulated points and acquires the mysterious bluish bottle. The magic potion promises to reverse natural causality and point the exact path to a great treasure. Knowing money is a crucial tool for his evolution, the young man decides to drink the liquid at once. The young man turns the bottle and consumes all the shining liquid, feeling the magic energy go down his throat. The hunter finishes drinking and looks around confused upon noting that nothing seems to have changed in his room. Suddenly, a big shining money symbol appears, floating in blue flames right above his head. The magic mark begins to descend slowly, pointing to a specific object that is on top of the mattress. Tematsukashiro is very confused upon realizing that the mark is pointing directly to his cell phone. The blue energy flame merges with the device, while the device begins to vibrate again on the sheet. The screen displays one more missed call from his former team chief, making the hero understand the divine message. The young man finally answers the phone, and on the other side, the chief screams furious, ordering him to show up soon. The manager rants, asking the reason for the delay, and orders the young man to go immediately to the office. The protagonist opens a wide smile upon realizing that the potion's treasure is located in that agency. He hears someone shouting angrily on the other end of the line, asking what he just said. The young man simply tells the man to wait exactly where he is and hangs up. He walks through the city streets, following the trail of energy that guides him to the building. The young man enters the dark hallway, while the small blue flame continues to show the way. The energy stops in front of a door, confirming that the potion's effect is active. He opens the door slowly, wondering what kind of treasure might be hidden there. Suddenly, he is met with the shouts of a furious man who throws an object in his direction. The team leader, Hiroki Gondo, yells in a rage, saying that he lost a big deal because of him. The boss orders his henchmen to teach the young man a lesson so he learns to respect orders. The hero reflects that Gondo is just an ordinary human who used to humiliate him for being a weak hunter. The system activates the memory search skill, showing the aggression he suffered in the past. He remembers that those responsible for beating him were the D-rank hunters Masato and Taiji. One of the bullies grabs the young man by the collar, mocking his confident and fearless look. The boss orders an immediate attack upon noticing that the young man is acting very strangely. The brute warns him that he still doesn't understand the gravity of the situation he has gotten himself into. The protagonist knows that these hunters stuck at D rank have inferior skills. The young man activates his maximum strength skill and grabs the aggressor's hand with extreme ease. With one quick movement, he throws the giant brute straight to the other side of the room. The giant crashes into the bookshelves, leaving the other two men completely shocked. The second hunter advances furiously, trying to land a powerful punch on the young man's face. Upon activating his level 10 perception, the enemy's strike seems to move in slow motion. The warrior uses his martial arts techniques to deliver a devastating counterattack. The man collapses to the floor screaming in pain, while the protagonist calmly observes the damage. Desperate at the defeat of his men, the boss starts yelling, demanding that they fight seriously. The first brute gets up, his arm muscles growing very rapidly. The hunter activates his body amplification technique, becoming giant and furious at the young man. The monster lunges at the hero with everything he has, delivering a destructive charge. Without showing any effort, the young man lands a direct punch to the giant's face. The force of the impact is so great that the brute is knocked back and hits the boss himself. The two fall to the floor together, with the boss letting out a loud groan of pain as he is crushed. Even while down, the businessman threatens to end his hunting career once and for all. The young man approaches with a look so terrifying that it makes the man scream in immediate terror. The boss tries to use his influence to intimidate the young man, warning him about the consequences. With total contempt, the warrior asks what he intends to do while raising his foot. In the next moment, the three aggressors appear on their knees, begging for forgiveness. He demands the money for the tickets deducted from his salary, and the boss agrees to pay it all. The hero accepts the apologies, but wonders if there is really any valuable treasure there. He realizes that the system's blue flame is floating right in front of one of the bookshelves. Carefully, the young man starts moving the books aside to see what is hidden behind them. He finds a secret digital safe protected by a high security password. The businessman becomes extremely tense, seeing that his most valuable secret has been discovered. The man starts stuttering with dread, fearing he will lose what he kept with such secrecy. The boss tries to bluff, saying that the safe has a 20-digit password that is impossible to open. To the man's despair, the system displays all the password codes being cracked. He types in the revealed sequence, hoping to find something that will change his financial life. The hunter calmly inserts the final numbers while hearing the beep of the electronic panel. The safe door opens, revealing some important documents glowing with energy. Upon seeing the papers, the young man realizes it is a book with records of illegal profits. He also finds a key with a mana crystal that is worth at least 1 million yen. He puts the valuable item away and reflects ironically if what he is doing was nothing more than a robbery. The document reveals a secret investigation into an unregistered dungeon in Yokohama with a mental barrier. The hero realizes that he knows the location and that he can make a true fortune if he manages to conquer it. Desperate, the boss begs, saying that he spent a lot of money preparing for that high-ranked dungeon. The young man gives a side smirk and coldly replies that he himself will decide what to do with the information. Suddenly, the room door opens and a mysterious man with long hair enters with calm steps. The newcomer in a lab coat is surprised to see that someone was already messing with the confidential files in the safe. The protagonist is completely shocked to recognize the identity of the mysterious visitor immediately. The stranger walks calmly in his direction and asks with a smile if the young man knows who he is talking to. The young man knows very well that the man is Kyosuke Sengoku, a legend everyone knew in the apocalyptic future. To the young man's surprise, the visitor reveals that he knows him as the weak, untalented, lowest-level hunter. He comments with an ironic tone that is what they usually call the young man at that small odd job's office. Then, the visitor in the white lab coat looks directly at the open safe that is still glowing in the cabinet. Without hesitation, the young man lifts the investigation report, asking if that was what he was looking for. Son Goku smiles, quite intrigued, and asks how the young man knew that the document was his true target. The boss tries to advance, desperate to recover the report, but is coldly ignored by the two hunters. With an extremely quick and precise blow, the visitor knocks out the businessman without making the slightest effort. The man collapses unconscious on the floor, while the scientist adjusts his posture with total tranquility and calm. He complains about the boss's lie and confesses that he had been looking for that paper for a long time. The scientist thanks the protagonist for his help and promises to reward him appropriately at another time. He holds out his hand, handing over a card, and asks the young man to call that number in a week. The warrior looks at the paper, unable to believe he just got the direct contact of the legend. Son Goku is a feared S-rank hunter known for predicting the terrible and devastating demon invasion. He leads the world's largest information group and now walks calmly toward the room's exit. As he says goodbye, the legendary hunter comments mentally that the young man is a fascinating person to observe. He reflects, impressed, that even his great deduction skills were fooled at that moment. The hero also looks back, thinking about how the scientist is an extremely intelligent and intriguing figure. The mysterious man finally leaves the room and walks away, leaving a great mystery floating in the air. The scientist reveals in his thoughts that he knows about the young man's involvement in the Night Crow Guild case. He guarantees to himself that he has no intention of blackmailing the young man with this great discovery. However, he admits that he is very curious and wants to hear the whole story at their next meeting. With a friendly nod, the legendary hunter disappears completely into a magical smoke in the hallway. Protagonist celebrates, knowing that getting that man's contact was a wonderful stroke of luck. The system glows suddenly, announcing that he has just acquired a new and useful passive luck skill. The notification explains that this skill will greatly increase his chances of having good opportunities in everyday life. He celebrates, knowing that now it will be much easier to get information about the demons hidden in the world. The blue glow goes out, and a system message warns that the treasure potion's effect time has ended. He opens the shop menu and sees that he is now completely out of points after spending everything on that last item. The young man reflects that he needs to accumulate more points urgently to buy other valuable potions from the shop. He plans to level up soon and decides to use the money he got from the boss to buy equipment. The warrior heads to the busy commercial street to buy the items needed for his new journey. He hands a list to the specialist store attendant, who hurries to get the tools. He leaves loaded with the expensive new equipment, knowing that they are crucial for his next mission. Upon checking his bank app, he notes with disappointment that his account is almost completely empty. The young man tries to console himself by smiling, thinking that all that spending was just a necessary investment. He travels to the mountainous region of Yokohama, determined to get a lot of treasure to recover the money. He finally arrives in front of the rocky entrance of a mysterious cave and takes a deep breath before entering. The hunter descends the dark stairs, noting that the entrance is guarded by a powerful psychic barrier. He knows that if an ordinary warrior tried to pass that point, they would end up losing their sanity completely. As he takes the first step toward the purple blockade, the young man feels an enormous and painful mental pressure. The system activates his mental resistance skill, helping him fight the strong illusion that tries to affect him. Scary voices start to echo in the young man's mind, calling him trash and saying he is just dead weight. He holds his head with great force, trying to resist the painful insults that arise in his thoughts. The young man realizes that all the negative emotions of his past life are coming back like a giant wave. Memories of the humiliations from when he was considered worse than a goblin tried to destroy his willpower. He refuses to give in and focuses on moving forward, remembering that he is no longer that weak, untalented hunter. The young man feels his mind strengthen, and the system announces that his mental resistance has leveled up twice. The warrior continues walking with difficulty along the stone walls. While trying to catch his breath, he recognizes that he would never be able to pass through that hallway if he didn't have this system's skill. The young man reaches a huge stone chamber decorated with scary gargoyles on the hall walls. He stops in front of an even denser purple magic barrier and wonders if the challenge will be worse ahead. He thinks it is strange that he has advanced so far in the dungeon without encountering any monsters along the way. the young man activates the system's memory search to try to decipher the mystery of that silent location. He remembers that reports said only elite C-rank hunters could get close to there. His memories reveal that this dungeon will eventually be dominated by a terrible and undefeated demon commander. This monster possesses devastating strength equivalent to the maximum level and almost brought humanity to ruin. The protagonist realizes that the legendary equipment of the demon commander is kept behind that barrier. He concludes, excited, that these extremely rare and valuable items are the true treasure of the dungeon. The young man prepares himself, knowing that from then on he will face physical traps in addition to strong mental attacks. A sharp sound echoes through the dark hallway, instantly activating all of the hero's battle senses. Several sharp arrows are fired in his direction, forcing the young man to dodge quickly in surprise. The warrior activates his perception and maximum agility skills to dodge the rain of deadly projectiles. He wipes the sweat from his face, knowing he would be dead if he hadn't evolved his combat attributes so much. The young man looks at the arrows stuck in the ground, aware that any carelessness in the hallway would be fatal. He concentrates and decides to dodge only by the sound of the shots, before even being able to see the attacks. A new and massive wave of sharp arrows falls from the dungeon ceiling toward the young hunter. With agile and precise movements, he spins through the hall, perfectly dodging every imminent danger. He demonstrates absurd body control while passing unharmed through the traps that try to hit him. The young man gains another level of mental resistance while sliding under dozens of projectiles. The system continues to raise the level of his support skill as he advances under extreme pressure. He dodges one more sequence of attacks, making his passive skill evolve one more time. The hero jumps between the rebel and traps without losing focus for even a single second of combat. A giant rock rolls in his direction, and the system warns that his mental resistance has reached level 10. He performs a risky maneuver to escape being crushed, and his mental defense skill levels up again. With the skill at the maximum level, the young man realizes that the dungeon's psychological attacks no longer affect him. The system reveals that he has gained total immunity against any type of spell or mental control effect. Suddenly, a dense purple smoke starts spreading across the dark chamber's stone floor. The young man observes the mysterious mist without showing any kind of fear or hesitation in the face of danger. He knows that smoke is the beginning of a psychic attack that even S-rank hunters find unbearable. Amidst the mist, the illusion of a person suffering and begging desperately for death appears on the floor. Several desperate specters scream and cry around the hero, who continues walking with total coldness. The young man reflects that the souls are projections of the portal's victims, but his mental barrier keeps him calm. The hunter follows his path through the imposing Gothic hallway without being affected by the scary visions. At the end of the hallway, he spots an imposing armored figure holding a glowing sword. He draws his daggers, knowing he needs to defeat that boss to get the dungeon's legendary item. The protagonist's dagger starts glowing intensely with a powerful blue electric energy. The system screen reveals the attributes of his new super, rare weapon that absorbs enemies' energy. He activates his level 10 swordsmanship skill and advances with everything for the confrontation against the Guardian. The blades clash violently, creating bright blue and purple energy sparks across the stone room. The two exchange fast blows in an intense, breathtaking combat for the supremacy of that arena. The young man retreats upon noticing he didn't cause damage, and the system activates his injury-resistant skill. The dungeon boss shows himself to be extremely resistant and uses a scary magic aura on his blade. As if that weren't enough, he also summons several armored soldiers to fight by his side in combat. The level 20 young man gets worried, thinking if he really has a chance to beat so many rivals at once. However, he has a realization and wonders if defeating these summoned monsters will earn him experience. Aware that he can evolve at D rank, the young man decides to use the boss's minions to gain a lot of strength. He displays a confident smile, remembering that his system's experience multiplier is still active. With his daggers in hand, the young man advances without fear against the armored warriors summoned by the boss. He activates his level 7 intimidation skill, causing the monsters to become paralyzed with dread. The hero executes a devastating linear cut, moving at the speed of light toward the opponents. He hits the stone guards squarely, destroying their armor with a single precise attack. The system announces that his attributes have increased in an absurd way thanks to his skill's effect. The young man starts glowing intensely, while the system displays an incredible sequence of levels going up. Thanks to the point multiplication, he quickly reaches level 30 and feels his power grow quite a bit. The dungeon boss tries to surprise him, delivering a powerful aerial attack with his giant sword. The young man reacts quickly, dodging the blow and initiating a fierce sequence of counterattacks. He jumps into the air, propelled by his agility, and comes down with a devastating attack on the powerful rival. His combat techniques and maximum perception guide his movements in the air with extreme warrior precision. He delivers a mercy blow, splitting the armored warrior's defense in half with his daggers. The hero lands softly on the floor, while the defeated monster starts to dissipate in the stone chamber. More blue warnings appear on the screen, showing that he jumped directly to level 39. He celebrates upon reaching level 40, noting that the hordes of monsters finally stopped appearing. Now only the main version of the boss remains, to be faced to clear the dungeon completely. The huge black armored knight delivers a brutal attack, cutting the surrounding stones with his sword. The warrior uses his level 10 linear cut technique, advancing like a blue lightning bolt against the enemy. A bright cut crosses the monster's body, dividing its powerful structure into two equal parts. The knight's helmet shatters completely, revealing the definitive defeat of the creature of darkness. A large red and blue explosion consumes the armored guardian's body, which turns into dust. The monster finally falls defeated, leaving a trail of smoke and dust throughout the destroyed stone hall. The system warns that his new soul, devouring weapon, absorbed the evil energy and increased its power. Since he reached the temporary maximum level, all extra experience is now converted into shop points. He celebrates upon receiving his bonus points along with confirmation that the dungeon has been fully completed. The hero explains in a fun way that unlike gates, dungeons always give a physical reward. He holds out his hands, anxious to discover what legendary item the demon commander would use in the future. A golden and radiant light starts to materialize slowly over the palm of his opened hands. The glow fades, revealing a mysterious metal ring with a fairly simple look and no details. The young man is a bit intrigued and reflects that one should never judge an object by its appearance alone. The blue window reveals that it is a unique, ranked defense ring with its main effects sealed. He is extremely excited to note that it is a growth accessory that evolves along with the wearer. The warrior gives a side smile, knowing that his experience multiplier will make the item evolve very quickly. He opens his status screen and sees that his maximum D rank level has been reached with total success by the system. A new limit, break quest, appears on the screen, so he can continue his warrior evolution. The objective requires him to collect 3 demonic sources to unlock the new functions of his skill. He reflects thoughtfully on the fact that the system seems to know exactly his plans to save the world. The hunter knows that the massive demon invasion hasn't happened yet because of a crucial detail. The Earth's environment is different from the realm of darkness, and that is why the monsters try to create energy portals. For that, they use sacred relics that concentrate a massive amount of evil power across the planet. By spreading these energy sources across various points, they plan to facilitate the global invasion in the future. A traitor to humanity's testimony in the future revealed this terrible plan before it was executed. He told them, laughing, the people thought the invasion was sudden, but in reality, everything had already been planned. The traitor confessed that the demons had already been preparing long before any human noticed the danger. He explained that the plan consisted of gathering demonic energy sources to invade the world of humans. Desperate, he screamed, saying that he really didn't know about the true intentions of those creatures. The man confessed in a panic that they were planning to exterminate the entire human race without leaving any survivors. Soon after, the heavy blade descended quickly, decreeing the end of that traitor to humanity's life. The young man realizes that the best strategy to prevent the invasion is to destroy all those power sources spread out. With his new battle objective fully defined, he decides it is time to collect his rewards. The blue screen glows, announcing that he will receive a bonus item due to his limit, break skill. He waits anxiously while the item materializes, remembering how he won his powerful dagger in the past. The young man widens his eyes, quite surprised to notice the shape of the new equipment that appears before him. An imposing combat spear, full of glowing runes, appears floating amidst a large blue energy. A week later, the warrior walks calmly toward the city's gigantic training gymnasium. He observes the happy people around him and swears to himself that he will protect this world with all his strength. Suddenly, his cell phone starts to vibrate insistently, calling his attention amidst his walk. He sees dozens of messages from Yuna demanding the promised dinner and resolves to simply ignore everything for now. The young man focuses on his destination and finally arrives in front of the imposing official hunter training center. He gives a small smile of surprise for finally having the opportunity to frequent an elite location like that. The young man remembers that he could never come there before due to lack of money, but now he has enough resources to train. Suddenly, he hears a deafening noise of a motor accelerating at high speed right behind him. A red sports car appears out of control on the track, skidding toward the young hunter on the sidewalk. Thanks to his level 10 perception, the young man manages to perform an agile jump and dodge the vehicle with ease. Quite annoyed with the reckless driving, the young man shouts, asking if the driver has gone crazy and wants to kill him. The red sports vehicle's door opens slowly, revealing the driver who caused the whole incident. The hero observes the young man with stylish blue hair get out of the luxury car with total tranquility. The mysterious young man with blue hair widens his eyes and seems to recognize the protagonist immediately. He takes a few quick steps in the protagonist's direction with an expression of great surprise and enthusiasm. The blue-haired young man continues walking, excited, while the protagonist observes him, not understanding anything. He opens a huge smile and shouts, calling the protagonist Master, to the surprise of everyone around. The blue-haired young man proudly displays his new red car, bought with the bonus from his new guild. He reveals, excited, that he has just joined the famous Guardian Guild, leaving the hero impressed. These three great elite organizations are known for reigning supreme, as the largest in the country. Kirishima was recruited as the new prodigy due to his talent and received a gigantic initial payment. The hero asks with a bored expression for him to stop calling him Master once and for all. The young man explains that the title of Master carries a lot of responsibility and prefers to be called another way. He scratches his head, thoughtful, and says that he can call him whatever he finds most convenient and simple. The blue-haired young man crosses his arms, trying to think of an appropriate nickname for his master. Without patience to wait, the young man decides to turn his back and continue his way to the building's reception. Seeing the protagonist walk away, the blue-haired young man runs, desperately so as not to be left behind. Upon seeing the absurd price list of the training rooms, he decides to start just with the A-rank option. However, his companion appears suddenly and hands a VIP card at the reception, paying for the whole training. The attendant smiles politely and warns that she will guide the duo to the special training room. The hero almost falls backward upon noticing that the session in that VIP room cost an impressive 3 million. The blue-haired young man asks, smiling, if the master would like to train with him in that exclusive area. They enter a gigantic hall where holographic projections of energy dragons fly across the ceiling. Without wasting time, the hero decides to test his new equipment and throws the large spear with all his strength. The weapon crosses the air at high speed and hits the holographic target, generating an energy explosion. With a quick command, the young man extends his hand and the spear returns, flying directly back to him. He reads the attributes, discovering that the unique rank weapon will always return to his hand when called. Kirishima's eyes glow with admiration, and he asks what kind of secret technique he used. Embarrassed, the hero replies that he just threw it hard, hiding that his throwing skill leveled up. He evaluates the destructive power of the spear and concludes that it will be an excellent secondary weapon in combat. The virtual monsters start flying fiercely through the VIP training hall. Kirishima prepares to attack, focused on not falling behind his powerful master. With a war cry, the blue-haired young man executes a formidable blow against the dragon. He cuts the holographic creature in half with the surgical precision of a master swordsman. The hero observes the blow with admiration, recognizing the impeccable talent of the sword saint. Kirishima lands on the floor triumphantly, sheathing his blades with great ease and elegance. However, he sighs, dissatisfied, feeling that his movement is still not perfect. The young man humbly asks the hero to demonstrate the linear technique one more time. The protagonist guides his disciple to train by combining the concepts of energy and continuing to practice. To illustrate the technique, the young man performs an absurd jump, rising to the ceiling of the huge gymnasium. He activates his nearly perfect linear cut, concentrating all his mana into the blade. The hero strikes the air with force, and the system announces that his cut technique has leveled up to 11. The impact is so overwhelming that Kirishima is pushed back by the strong shock wave. The protagonist lands calmly, his daggers glowing amidst the residues of blue energy. Excited, the young man hugs him, saying that he will christen the movement with his master's last name. He is totally fascinated to realize that the hero managed to evolve a common combat skill. Suddenly, the protagonist's cell phone starts ringing, calling the attention of the two young men. The screen shows that the legendary Kyosuke Sengoku is calling exactly as planned. The hero thanks him for the training and warns that he needs to leave in a hurry, leaving his companion confused. He passes through the automatic doors of the gymnasium, focused on his important meeting. Alone in the room, Kirishima kneels and swears to train until he reaches the same level as his master. Later, the hero meets the legendary Hunter at a charming outdoor coffee table. The scientist thanks him, commenting that the information obtained changed the course of his organization. He prepares to deliver his reward discreetly so as not to raise suspicions. The master of information reinforces that his personal policy is to always return the favors he receives. The hero observes the man with caution, knowing of the enormous influence he possesses in the world. He remembers how the scientist acted as an important information broker in the destroyed future. In that time, the man made it clear that he didn't help anyone out of kindness, but rather by exchanging benefits. The young man recalls that the scientist was always very calculating and different from traditional heroes. He understands that the scientist's interest proves that he has become a useful piece on the chessboard. The young man places a heavy sports bag on the table and asks if the favor will be returned. Upon opening the suitcase, the scientist is faced with dozens of rare orange mana crystals. The hero explains that he wishes to negotiate those valuable gems directly with his organization. The master of information is quite intrigued by the proposal to maintain continuous trade. He knows it would be difficult to sell that without the association's endorsement, but the scientist will not refuse profit. The man accepts the deal, smiling, and guarantees that he always keeps his word in business. Then, the young man hands over a small folded note containing valuable information about the future. The scientist opens the paper and is faced with a detailed list of local names and artifacts. The hero confesses that the list contains the clues to locate the demons, terrible energy sources. He asks for the scientist's spy network to investigate the whereabouts of those specific targets. The man analyzes the information with caution, realizing that the scale of the plan is gigantic. He accepts the mission willingly, confirming that he will give all the necessary support to the young hunter. The protagonist gets startled when the scientist calls him by his new and recently acquired hunter rank. The man explains that he needs someone strong for a portal restricted only to D rank hunters. The hero takes the tablet, knowing that that special mission is the real reason for their meeting. The scientist displays the image of a legendary diamond and asks the young man to recover the Jewel of Aldoria. The young man observes the item, thoughtful, trying to remember where he has heard of that mysterious artifact before. The hero asks if he will act alone, and the scientist replies that he has recruited other D-rank prodigies. The Master of Information asks with a smile if the young man would like to meet his new allies. At that moment, the other elite warriors approach the table to make the official introductions. Tenma looks at the two young men in front of him and suggests that everyone start with a quick personal introduction. The first introduces himself as Masayoshi Yakumo, 27 years old, and says he will be the group's protector during the mission. Tenma remembers that Yakumo is known as a mean hunter who usually mistreats and even kills newcomers. Then, the black-haired young man introduces himself shyly as Yozaki and reveals that he uses lightning magic. The protagonist recognizes the boy as a future, extremely dangerous, psychopathic villain who will take many lives. Tenma realizes that Kyosuke Sengoku really gathered peculiar people and introduces himself, saying he uses a dagger. The pink-haired girl asks what he is looking at and questions if, by any chance, he already knows her from somewhere. She says they just need to get the job done quickly, and that there is no need for formal introductions. The protagonist says her name out loud, leaving the girl surprised and confused as to how he knows her identity. Tenma smiles mentally, thinking that at least the scientist included one truly decent person in the group. He reflects on how the people who live in that ruined world carry deep traumas and much sadness. Amidst so much pain, some bizarre hunters ended up becoming eccentric, and she was precisely one of those people. She didn't work and didn't negotiate with anyone, surviving only by robbing humans, monsters, and refugees without distinction. He is surprised to find her there, while she asks with distrust who he is and what he has on his face. The protagonist introduces himself as Tenma Tsukashiro D rank, revealing that he usually fights using swords and spears. Yakumo lets out a loud laugh and suggests that the group finally enter the dungeon to begin the exploration. The four hunters walk in a line toward the glowing golden portal that floats at the top of the hill. The hero observes the magic barrier with attention while the system confirms their entry into the special dungeon. A message on the screen indicates that all members of the group meet the level requirements demanded by the portal. The protagonist opens his eyes slowly, trying to get used to the strong light of the surrounding environment. The group finds themselves in an immense, scorching desert of sand glowing under the strong sun of that new world. The young ones complain about the extreme heat, but the protector warns that he bought some magic ice packs before leaving. The muscular hunter activates a special cooling pack that starts emanating a cold and refreshing energy. Tenma realizes that they received prior information and concludes that Yakumo was defined as the group leader. The girl celebrates the relief from the heat, while the leader orders everyone to advance, keeping their guard high. The four hunters continue walking slowly through the immensity of sand under the blue desert sky. Suddenly, the protagonist asks everyone to stop immediately, calling the attention of the rest of the team. He warns that there is a magic creature ahead after activating his level 10 perception skill. The group leader looks toward the horizon, trying to see something but complains, saying he doesn't see absolutely anything. Yakumo says not to worry and guarantees that, as leader, he will block any attack that arises along the way. Suddenly, the sand explodes with violence, revealing a terrible and gigantic monstrous scorpion before them. Several other monsters emerge from the ground, causing the girl to praise the protagonist's great sense of danger. The muscular hunter wields his shield and orders all his companions to stay protected behind him. He shouts, provoking the creatures while activating his special level 5 provocation skill. The terrible giant scorpions, drawn by the provocation, and advance fiercely against the warrior's shield. With firmness, the hunter manages to block the impact of the attacks, creating a defensive energy barrier. Yazuki starts charging his lightning magic while warning his companion to dodge the imminent attack. A powerful beam of blue electric energy is fired in a straight line, hitting the monsters with precision. The electricity explodes in the middle of the group of scorpions, spreading bright sparks throughout the sandy area. Without wasting time, the young pink-haired hunter jumps at speed to finish off the remaining beasts. She executes quick and extremely precise cuts, slicing the monsters stunned by the electricity. The pieces of the defeated enemies fall into the soft sand of the desert as the battle dust starts to settle. The group leader praises the performance of the young ones, but the girl responds with disdain, saying that was nothing. The protagonist observes the combat and realizes that they form a strong team that doesn't need his direct help. The leader demands that the protagonist do at least something, and he agrees in a somewhat awkward way. Suddenly, the protagonist feels a strange vibration coming from the ground and stops walking immediately. He shouts, alerting that something very big is approaching, leaving the other companions on alert. A colossal and scary claw emerges from the depths of the sand right under where they were stepping. The giant monster attacks by surprise, throwing the pink-haired girl high into the air amidst the rebel. A giant demonic scorpion emerges from the sand, causing everyone to scream in terror before such a creature. Yakumo realizes, irritated, that his provocation doesn't work due to the huge level difference between him and the monster. The hero prepares quickly to act strategically and solve the problem before the worst happens. He remembers a cold night in the past when he was woken up by a friend in a mysterious way near a campfire. The friend asks for total silence and tells him to follow him silently so that no one discovers that escape. The protagonist wonders about the reason for the young man digging a hole in the ground in the middle of that darkness. The young man points to the dug hole and asks him to look carefully at what was hidden down there. He is quite shocked to see that the hole held several candies and juices that were extremely difficult to get. The friend reveals that he worked hard to gather those treats and confesses that he wanted to give everything as a gift to him. The black-haired young man smiles gently and remembers that that day was precisely the protagonist's birthday. The hero cries with emotion and thanks him from the bottom of his heart for that beautiful and unexpected gesture from his best friend. The young man advises that he eat everything in secret so he doesn't get caught, and the protagonist accepts the advice very happily. Suddenly, a violent blow hits the protagonist by surprise, interrupting that happy moment in a brutal way. The hero collapses to the floor and is faced with a mysterious hooded assassin who appeared out of nowhere in the darkness of the night. The long-haired friend widens his eyes and recognizes the terrible and ruthless thief known as Hoshimori. Without showing any pity, the thief advances at high speed to attack the young man who was trying to protect him. The companion is hit squarely by the fast blow and lets out a scream of pain as he is thrown backward in the fight. The villain simply walks away, leaving the two injured young men on the floor while the valuable candies scatter. A gloved hand opens one of the soda cans that had been stolen in a very cold and calculating way. The thief drinks the beverage with total tranquility, demonstrating that she doesn't care at all about the boy's suffering. The remains of empty packaging and bottles thrown on the floor show that everything they kept was consumed. The two friends cry desperately on the ground upon realizing that all their effort was completely ruined. The hero never forgot the cold look of the thief while stealing the candies that, in the ruined world, were worth more than gold. In the present, the pink-haired girl screams desperately for help while being squeezed by the monster's claws. The team companions observe the scene terrified, not knowing how to act in the face of the giant scorpion's immense power. The leader shouts for the protagonist to use his shield, but gets scared to see the young man advance empty-handed in battle. The protagonist runs at high speed across the desert sand, determined to resolve the combat with his own methods. The group's protector tries to withstand the monster's strong pressure with his shield, while letting out a groan of pain from the effort. The hero prepares and activates the special skill of his return spear, which starts glowing intensely in his hand. He jumps high into the air, knowing that the weak point of that gigantic creature is located exactly in its head. The system announces the activation of his level 11 throwing technique, firing a powerful wave of blue energy. The The fast spear crosses the air and pierces the monster's armored carcass with a devastating impact that divides its body. The giant creature is destroyed instantly, and its remains fall lifelessly onto the sandy desert ground. The girl is released and falls face first into the sand while spitting out the dirt dust under the calm gaze of the young protagonist. The companions are shocked by the hero's hidden power, while he deflects the conversation in a very simple and calm way. Suddenly, the hero looks back seriously upon, feeling a strange energy emanating from somewhere near there. The pink-haired girl gets up, confused, and looks in the same direction, trying to understand what is happening there. An immense sand whirlwind starts forming in the middle of the desert, creating a huge, dangerous crater in the region. The group observes the phenomenon impressed, while the ground shakes violently and the earth continues collapsing into the pit. The leader notices the danger and shouts desperately for everyone to get out of there quickly before they are sucked into the whirlwind. The girl starts slipping to the bottom of the crater and complains furiously about her lack of luck on that training day. The protagonist observes the scene with a slight smile, thinking that that is nothing more than the law of return acting against her. At the top of the hill, two men in suits observe the group's movement in the crater and talk about the secret mission. One of them remembers that the boss's order is to act in silence and only ensure control of the demonic energy source. Suddenly, a mysterious hand grabs the man's shoulder, and he gets scared upon noticing that someone approached without being seen. The scary man behind them says that acting in silence means they can eliminate anyone who gets in their way. The terrible villain, Riku Himuro of the Black Knot Group, mocks the men in suits for wanting to waste that opportunity. That organization is known throughout the country as one of the most dangerous and influential mid-size guilds in the underworld. On the outside, they seem like a respectable guild, but behind the scenes, they perform various dirty and violent jobs for money. The criminal group is formed by renegade hunters who have already committed various serious crimes like robbery and murder. In the office, the secretary reports that the villain's presence was confirmed in the dungeon along with the Vanguard Guild. The guild leader asks if his subordinate really gave the correct orders to the mission soldiers. The man in the suit confirms that the master's order was to eliminate anyone who dared to interfere with the plans. Quite tense and sweating from nervousness, the subordinate nods, confirming the organization's cruel plan. The man says goodbye to his leader and leaves the room, closing the door slowly so as not to irritate his boss even more. As soon as he is alone in the room, the leader leans on his desk, demonstrating that he is hiding a great rage. With a lot of anger, he takes out his frustration by delivering a violent punch that breaks his own wooden desk. The boss asks himself, irritated, how an ordinary guild managed to possess the portal before he managed to recruit elites. He knows very well that if he loses control of the demonic source, that mysterious person will take his life without hesitation. Meanwhile, in the desert, the three villains continue observing the group that struggles to get out of the sand crater. Riku Himuro snaps his fingers, laughing, and asks why they should leave alive any hunter who crosses their path. The leader of the group in suits tries to impose respect, remembering that he is in charge of that important operation there. Suddenly, Himuro shuts him up by grabbing the suit leader's face aggressively and with extreme attack speed. Without giving a chance for defense, the villain throws the man against the ground, breaking the rocks with the force of his brutal impact. The impact is so violent that the man's blood spray across the sand, decreeing the quick end of that weak leader. The other accomplice in the suit is totally horrified to witness the cruel murder of his guild companion. He screams desperately, asking what he is doing, but the villain warns coldly that everyone there will die soon. The subordinate asks, scared, for the reason for that, but the assassin responds, laughing, if he really needs a reason. He opens a macabre smile, cleaning the blood from his face, and confesses that he kills people simply for pure fun. The poor man takes a few steps back and falls to the floor, trembling with dread upon realizing he is dealing with a psychopath. The psychopath amuses himself with the man's expression of fear and mocks the fact that he believed in a fake partnership. The man screams in dread upon noticing the immense shadow of death approaching him without any chance of mercy. Shortly after, silence returns to the desert, while the psychopath assassin observes the bodies fallen around him. He smiles, satisfied, calculating that now the combat will be just him against the 4 hunters who are in the crater. Unaware of the danger, the 4D rank young ones continue their journey through the desert with the protector leading the way. Night falls fast in the dungeon, and Yakumo tries to cheer up the group, saying that the drastic weather change seems like a camping trip. Sitting near the campfire, the protector reveals his dream of creating a free guild in the future and invites the group to participate. The hero observes him with distrust, remembering that in the future, that free guild of Yakumo will commit crimes and murders. Yozaki politely refuses the invitation to join the group, revealing that he has other personal plans for his future. Tenma looks at the young man with coldness, remembering that his true ambition is to use electricity to kill innocent people. The pink-haired young girl also rejects Akumo's proposal, stating that she has no interest in being part of guilds. She gets up and confesses with pride that her big life dream is to join the association and become a great heroine. The protagonist gets up, laughing mentally at the irony of a thief wanting to become a heroine, and she asks where he is going. He simply responds evasively, saying he is just going to walk a bit around the surroundings of that camp. The young man enters the dark forest, knowing he cannot stay there waiting because dawn may take a while to arrive. He activates the system's memory search, remembering that the traitor revealed that the demonic source is inside the pyramid. Suddenly, his level 10 perception skill is activated, alerting the hero about a dangerous presence in the shadows. With fast combat reflexes, he manages to dodge perfectly a surprise attack coming from behind the bushes. In an agile movement, the protagonist counterattacks and firmly holds the wrist of the person who was trying to attack him. Suddenly, he realizes that who was there was actually the pink-haired young girl who lets out a groan of pain upon being held. The hero releases her and the girl asks, surprised, how he managed to find her since she was hidden perfectly there. He asks the reason for being followed, and she confesses that her intuition told her to stay near him for safety. The hero reflects mentally that, if he manages to use her stealing skill, it will be much easier to recover the relic. He orders her to follow him immediately, and the pink-haired girl asks, intrigued, what the final destination of the walk is. The protagonist points to the Great Pyramid and states that the object she loves most in the entire world is hidden there. The girl is suspicious, saying that her danger sensor warns that that location is bad and mocks his rescue in the crater. She tries to justify herself, saying that she just wasn't having her best day, but guarantees that if he follows her, he won't regret it. The protagonist simply ignores her excuse and continues walking in silence toward the monument's entrance. Upon looking at him, the girl thinks the young man is attractive and decides she can trust him for now, since he saved her life. She runs to catch up and warns out loud that she will not forgive him if he makes her regret trusting his word. The hero reflects that her danger sensor didn't activate because the system knew he would save her from any threat there. While they walk through the dark monument hallway, the girl comments that the bad feeling she felt is gone. She scratches her head, intrigued to realize that that terrible premonition of danger simply disappeared. He tells her just to follow him without worries, while she states that her instincts indicate something valuable there. The protagonist insists for her to continue following his steps, while his system perception levels up. The blue screen warns that his skill reached level 11, allowing him now to see some messages of hers. Excited, the girl runs ahead, saying she will prove the great value of her special detection skill. She brags, pointing to the dark hallway, and guarantees with total confidence that the path is totally safe. In the next second, a giant rock appears, rolling behind her, making the young girl run desperately to save her life. The protagonist draws his sword calmly while she screams desperately, asking why he doesn't run away too. With an extremely fast and powerful blow, the hero cuts the huge stone in half using his bright blue energy. The girl observes the scene totally in shock and asks if he is really just an ordinary D-rank hunter. The system activates the enhanced perception effect, revealing that there is something hidden right below that floor. The stone floor cracks and collapses, revealing a secret passage with stairs that descend into the depths. She is surprised by the discovered shortcut and wonders in silence who that mysterious young man really is. The two descend the stone steps and enter a colossal hall under the attentive gaze of a large shadow on the ceiling. They look up, surprised, and the girl questions with quite a bit of fear if that huge creature would be the big boss. Before them appears the imposing statue of the Sphinx which, according to the information, guards the valuable demonic source. The statue glows and a voice warns that the challengers must face the trial of the sacred sandstorm. Several bright and orange magic circles appear on the floor around the large statue, starting the test. Large pillars of fire and destructive energy start exploding from the ground, illuminating the entire hall with intensity. Desperate with the explosions, the girl screams, asking what they must do to escape that dangerous location. The protagonist doesn't waste time, performs an incredible jump, climbing with agility along the back of the gigantic creature. He helps his companion and the two land safely on top of the Sphinx's head, far from the explosion fire. She asks if the test is just to survive, but he warns with a serious look that they will use a different method. With total coldness, the young man reveals that their true plan up there is simply to steal the sacred item. She questions, scared, what he is planning to do, and the protagonist replies that she will do what she knows best. The young man grabs the companion's wrist by surprise, making her scream for him to wait before taking any action. The protagonist smiles, remembering that she has the power to pilfer any object, just as she did with the wallets. Surprised by the discovery of her secret technique, she refuses to cooperate and questions why she should follow his orders. While they argue, the gigantic statue starts trembling and emanating an even stronger and more dangerous orange glow. A massive wave of flames propagates through the air, forcing the two hunters to act quickly so as not to be consumed. The warrior shouts, ordering her not to waste time and use her stealing power, soon if she really wants to get out of there alive. Regretting having followed the young man, the girl activates her absolute looting skill while preparing to perform the theft. A bright linear cut crosses the air amidst the flames, creating the perfect opening for her to be able to act in the test. The system screen monitors the action and confirms that the girl's looting skill is being used directly on the boss. The hero praises her stolen power mentally while the Sphinx screams, scared, upon feeling its energy drain away. The monster tries to fight and demands, desperately, that they answer the classic leg riddle to complete the challenge. However, even before finishing speaking, the Sphinx disintegrates completely amidst a large cloud of dust and ashes. The protagonist smiles, saying that she acted like a true heroine upon using that thief's skill for good. The system confirms the distribution of the rewards, and a yellow light starts to materialize directly in her hands. A true rain of gold coins and valuable chests appears in the room, leaving the girl with eyes glowing with happiness. Amidst the treasure, she finds a mysterious metallic cube and asks, confused, what that demonic source would be. The protagonist extends his hand, warning that he will keep the cube while she finds it strange that the item emanates evil energy. The girl stares at him suspiciously and mutters that she already imagined that that object held some quite dark secret. He promises that he will explain everything later and says she can keep all the rest of the treasure if she hands over the cube. The young girl's eyes glow with gold dollar signs upon realizing that she will be able to get rich with all that mountain of wealth. The hero holds the relic, grateful for having achieved the first of the 3 targets in addition to a temporary talent bonus. With one quick movement, he channels the dark power directly into his sword's blade, creating a strong wind spiral. The system confirms that the soul devouring sword absorbed the demonic energy, increasing its physical attack power. The girl asks how he knew about her gift, and the hero responds with simplicity that he has a skill for reading opponents. The girl watches him from afar, thinking that besides being handsome, he seems to have a lot of potential to make her quite rich. Shortly after, the two return to the camp, where the other team members were already waiting for them near the campfire. The leader asks suspiciously where they were until late, and the young girl reacts irritably to his insinuation. The protagonist deflects, saying he was just giving life advice, and the girl pretends to confirm, looking quite embarrassed. Yakumo reinforces that he is the leader and strictly forbids anyone from acting alone without his prior authorization on the mission. He explains that the final objective is to defeat the dungeon boss quickly to recover the legendary jewel of Aldoria. The group starts to enter the dark staircases of the monument when suddenly they hear a very strange rumbling noise. Dozens of scary mummies emerge, running from the shadows, confirming that they are very close to the big boss's area. The hero draws his blue energy spear, excited about the chance to accumulate more points for his shop. He throws his weapon with precision, eliminating several monsters at once and securing extra points for his wallet. The protector is impressed with the young man's skills and secretly plans to use him to enrich his own guild. He praises the hero, saying he wants him in his group in the future, but the young man tells him to focus only on the combat ahead. The girl questions if he is really D rank, and the protagonist responds with logic that restricted portals bar high levels. They arrive at a huge stone chamber where a gigantic mysterious cube floats in the middle of the tome's main hall. Under the group's attentive gaze, the stone structure starts to crack and change shape, releasing immense telluric energy. A colossal sand golem materializes before them, revealing itself to be an opponent that promises to give them a lot of trouble in the fight. Confident, the leader activates his special provocation technique to draw the giant stone monster's attention to himself. The golem's immense fist descends with extreme violence, hitting the shield barrier raised by the protector square on. The impact of the blow is devastating, generating a huge shockwave that cracks the stone floor and shakes his defense. The force of the attack throws the muscular leader straight back, causing him to fall completely defeated on the hard ground. The young lightning mage shouts in complete despair upon seeing the strongest warrior of the group be knocked out easily. The terrible golem ignores the fallen leader and lunges at high speed toward the mage, who trembles with dread, unable to flee. Desperate, he fires his electric magic in a straight line, trying to push away the creature that continues advancing without stopping. The blue bolts hit the monster's chest, but cause no apparent damage to its resistant rock and sand structure. The electricity wraps around the creature's body, creating bright sparks, but the monster doesn't even slow its running pace. With an overwhelming slap, the golem hits the black-haired young man, who is violently slammed against the hall wall. The girl watches everything terrified and asks with a trembling voice if the teammate ended up dying from that blow. Protagonist deduces that the monster became much stronger due to the influence of the energy leaking from the demonic source. He orders the girl to run the other side, warning that they will repeat the same strategy used against the Sphinx. The sand golem performs an absurd jump, preparing to crush the two hunters with all its weight and physical force. The giant hits the ground, creating a huge rumble and kicking up a dense cloud of dust and rock chunks throughout the arena. The hero activates his maximum agility and perception skills, managing to escape the deadly attack at the speed of light. He uses the debris as support to jump high into the air, rising rapidly toward the stone creature's chest. With his blade in hand, the warrior focuses all his attention on the glowing core that serves as the monster's heart and weak point. He uses as the sole release of his sword to concentrate a devastating power capable of destroying the core with a single blow. The hero executes a perfect linear cut that cracks the outer armor and exposes the giant's reddish energy core. Amidst the dust, the monster's weak point becomes totally visible and unprotected, facilitating the end of the combat. The protagonist shouts, calling to his teammate, indicating that the exact moment for her to execute the plan has arrived. The girl jumps swiftly toward the exposed core, focusing on using her ability to steal the golem's vital energy. The system confirms the activation of the girl's absolute looting skill, glowing in reddish tones around her hands. The young man reflects that by stealing the property of the energy source, the golem will be forced to shut down its combat functions. To the despair of both, the system issues a red alert, warning that the loot failed due to the large level difference. The stone giant takes advantage of the failure and prepares to deliver a crushing blow against the girl, who is defenseless on the ground. Terrified, she asks what to do, and the hero shouts desperately, ordering her to run out of there immediately. The two retreat at high speed while the colossal sand golem pursues them, destroying everything in its path. The hero prepares his throw, activating his maximum strength and enhanced throw abilities in his combat system. He throws his blue energy spear, which hits the monster's face, creating a perfect distraction for them to retreat. A blue notification reveals that he has just acquired a new and very rare special skill for quick weapon switching. The message explains that the ability allows him to change equipment instantly, directly from his personal inventory. The bonus warns that his attack power will be temporarily increased by 3% right after performing the weapon switch. Tenma advances, delivering a powerful linear cut against the gigantic stone monster. The immense sand golem roars in great pain upon feeling the impact of the devastating attack. At that moment, his system activates the special level 1 quick weapon switch skill. He continues switching equipment, causing his skill to quickly level up to level 2. The switching ability evolves in a bizarre way, reaching level 5 in just a few seconds of combat. The system announces the destructive power of his switched weapons has received a nice 15% increase. He takes advantage of the damage bonus to deliver another blow charged with pure blue energy against the opponent. Tenma draws the soul-devouring sword, making his weapon switching skill go up to level 8. With the damage multiplier at 24%, he advances relentlessly to finish the combat. He changes quickly to the return spear, raising his weapon, switching skill to level 10. The bonus damage reaches 30% while the pink-haired young girl observes the boy, totally shocked. The system reveals that now he can be any weapon with a moderate amount of blue magic. The warrior points his mana, charged hand, and fires an overwhelming spell straight at the golem. A colossal explosion of energy completely destroys the stone body of the terrible dungeon boss. The blue screen confirms the golem's defeat and grants more than 400 special points to the hunter. Tenma wipes off the tired sweat while the girl praises him, admitting that he is an incredible warrior. An intense light appears in the air, announcing that the legendary Jewel of Aldoria has been granted as a reward. He holds the dark jewel, and the system reveals that the valuable item houses the soul of an ancient queen. The young girl runs, worried, to rescue the others while Tenma wonders if it is really worth helping them. He walks through the dark hallway, thinking that they must be fine if they use the healing potions. Suddenly, the girl stops, scared, upon noticing a strange presence further ahead in the dark hallway. They come across one of the teammates fallen and totally covered in blood on the stone floor. A mysterious man emerges from the shadows, mocking them for having defeated the 2 dungeon bosses. The assassin demands that they hand over the demonic source and threatens to kill them if they try to act stupidly. Upon looking to the side, the duo notices that the group's other ally was also brutally murdered. The young pink-haired hunter enters complete despair and panic upon seeing that bloody scene. Tenma deduces that the assassins from the Black Knock Guild took advantage of their fatigue to attack by surprise. The white-haired invader smiles upon realizing that the protagonist knows his evil guild's reputation. Without showing fear, the hero assumes he has the relic and challenges the rival to try to take it by force. He reflects that the opponent was sent by the traitor Igarashi and decides to focus the villain's entire attention on himself. The assassin scoffs, saying that he is exhausted and promises that he will kill him before finishing off the girl. The protagonist turns his back and asks calmly to the young girl if she would be capable of eliminating that man. She panics at the shocking question, while he reminds her that she needs to dirty her hands to be a heroine. Tenma advances calmly, making it clear that it is impossible to save the world without taking drastic measures. The psychopath lets out a hysterical laugh and lunges at the hero, holding his sharp dagger. With great coldness, the protagonist activates his level 11 perception to predict every movement of the aggressor. The two initiate a frantic combat where the warrior uses his maximum agility to dodge every attack. He counterattacks with his martial arts, throwing the assassin against the stone floor with extreme force. The invader is thrown far, but manages to recover quickly, sliding through the arena dust. Completely furious, the assassin screams that he will tear the hero apart before torturing the pink-haired girl. Knowing that psychopath represents a real danger, the protagonist draws his blade, decided to eliminate him. In a fraction of a second, the villain is surprised by an invisible attack that cuts his neck by surprise. Tenma executes the Tsukashiro linear cut flawlessly, slicing the enemy with his immense speed. The warrior sheathes his glowing blue sword, maintaining a totally calm and serene posture in the tome. The young girl is horrified by the villain's death, but the hero reminds her that the man executed the other allies. He looks at the bodies, knowing those hunters would become villains in the future, but they were still innocent there. The hero wonders if those young people's fate would be different if they had remained by his side. He decides to put the thoughts aside, warns the girl that their work there is concluded. Already out of the dungeon, several luxury cars wait in the dark parking lot in the middle of the cold night. The agents in suits approach quickly and celebrate upon seeing that the dangerous mission has finally ended. The agent in the suit thanks him for the great work and explains that he came personally because Master Sengoku is out of the country. Without wasting time, the protagonist holds out his hand and hands over the valuable diamond as proof of his mission's success. The man receives the valuable item and then asks curiously about the whereabouts of the other group hunters. Tenma explains coldly that the other two hunters ended up dying during the dangerous confrontation at the portal. Suddenly, a new system notifications starts glowing on the floating screen before the young hunter. The warning reveals that he has concluded the first part of the limit break quest, with only 2 more relics remaining. He reflects that he has no clues about the other sources and knows that he will need Sengoku's help to locate them. Before leaving, the pink-haired young girl approaches by surprise and hands him a mysterious green gift box. She thanks him for being saved several times and comments that he will get a good amount of money if he sells the chest. Already in his room, the young man sits on the bed wearing pajamas and prepares to finally open his new mysterious prize. The system reveals that it is a super rare locked box that grants a totally random reward. He gives a slight smile, finding it funny to receive such a valuable item precisely from the hands of a legendary thief. The young man touches the wooden chest structure and realizes that he has the perfect tool to open that lock. He draws the glowing key he got in the old boss's office, which reacts immediately upon coming into contact with the chest. The hunter inserts the object into the gold lock, quite anxious to discover what is kept inside. A beam of bright red light escapes the chest as soon as the latch opens, magically in the dark room. To the boy's surprise, the chest's interior reveals only a small vial containing a mysterious reddish potion. He analyzes the item and discovers that it is unicorn blood, a liquid capable of awakening the hidden power of items. Tenma remembers that this legendary elixir is the key to releasing the true power of his commander's defense ring. He holds the metal accessory, aware that the jewel's unique power is still completely sealed by the system. With great care, the young man pours the reddish potion over the ring to finally awaken its hidden potential. An immense wave of red energy consumes the environment, announcing that the defense ring's seal has been successfully broken. The system confirms that he has obtained the unbeaten growth ring, an extremely rare piece of equipment in the entire world. In a large residential building in the middle of the night, a loud and scandalous laugh echoes from one of the lit apartments. The girl bursts into laughter in the living room, mocking the fact that Yuna ended up being rejected by the mysterious hunter. Yuna takes a sip of beer, quite frustrated, not understanding the reason why he didn't call after asking for her number. The sister lying on the bed remembers that the boy saved everyone's life and that it would be impossible to survive without his help. Yuna becomes thoughtful and prefers to hide the details of the danger so as not to make her overprotective sister too worried. The sister recalls that the Silver Wing Guild selection exam will happen in a week, and Yuna agrees, thoughtful. Yuna almost spits her drink in surprise when her sister suggests she take the initiative and call the boy soon. The girl ties her hair and offers to pay for everyone's dinner if she manages to set up that special meeting. Red with shame, Yuna denies the idea immediately, shouting that she would never call him on her own. The older sister smiles with confidence, revealing that her true plan is to recruit the young hunter for her guild. The next day, the hero walks through the famous Artisan Street, a location filled with industries and chimney smoke. He observes the movement of the local blacksmiths and reflects that that forging area hasn't changed at all. Suddenly, his cell phone starts vibrating, announcing the arrival of a new message notification. Son Goku sends the payment of 12 million yen to his bank account, leaving the hero surprised by the amount. He knows that this fortune is still not enough to buy good full equipment and decides to look at the shops. While walking, the hunter hears threats of a furious man collecting an overdue debt further ahead. A muscular man holds a piece of wood and brutally beats a young artisan fallen on the stone sidewalk. The assaulted young man begs for his life, promising to pay everything, while Tenma analyzes the scene quite seriously. Upon looking more closely, the hero widens his eyes upon recognizing the identity of the young artisan on the ground immediately. The loan shark says that words don't work anymore and lifts his wooden club, ready to end the boy's life. Before the worst happens, a firm hand grabs the brute's shoulder, interrupting the attack abruptly. The giant turns around, quite irritated, asking who he thinks he is, and if by any chance he is a friend of the debtor. Without giving a chance for a response, Tenma delivers a violent and precise punch straight to the furious brute's face. The impact of the punch is so overwhelming that the muscular loan shark flies far, breaking the sidewalk structures. The hero crouches before the injured young man and says that it is an honor to meet him, leaving the artisan quite confused. He knows very well that that blonde young man will become the only and legendary creator of divine weapons in the world's future. The hunter focuses on young Koji Mochizuki, knowing that maintaining a good relationship with him will bring great advantages in his journey. Tenma offers help to the boy, knowing that he will become the only artisan capable of creating growth items in the country. The two enter the young blacksmith's workshop to talk calmly, far from the dangerous tax collectors. The blacksmith asks if he is a customer, and the hero wants to know the real reason for him being assaulted like that. Koji tries to disguise, saying it is nothing much, but the hunter responds firmly that the situation seemed serious. The blacksmith confesses that the terrible Saiyan Guild extorts local artisans by charging absurd interest on loans. He explains that the criminals steal equipment and enslave workers who don't have the strength to defend themselves. Koji smiles foolishly, saying he can endure the torture for one more year, leaving the hero scared of his lack of judgment. The protagonist remembers a memory from his past life where the elderly blacksmith was dragged by city guards. The elderly man was screaming desperately, saying that he needed to continue working and forging the best weapons for the world. The old artisan implored in tears for his old hammer, saying that he needed the tool to save humanity. The witnesses around mocked the old madman, while the protagonist observed him with quite a bit of curiosity in the past. The old man broke free from the ties for a second and grabbed the young man's clothes tightly, imploring for his tool. The blacksmith swore that his old hammer was waiting for him patiently at the bottom of a dark storage room in that big city. The guards soon contained the elderly man and dragged him away with violence, ordering him to walk quickly without causing a commotion. People lamented the old man's state of dementia, while he continued shouting about his forged hammer in the middle of the street. Tenma asked the reason for the arrest and learned that the old man assaulted refugees to steal jewels for his legendary creations. In the present, he realizes that the old man's delusion was actually real and decides to act to help him recover the sacred object. The hero asks if there is a legendary hammer there, and the blacksmith becomes quite surprised, questioning how he knows about that. He questions the current whereabouts of the relic, and the artisan reveals, sad, that the terrible guild boss stole his object. The protagonist realizes that the situation has become complex, but remains determined to put the item back into Koji's hands. The blacksmith says that the weapon is kept as collateral, and Tenma asks for the total value of his accumulated debt with the loan sharks. The hero almost falls backward when the young artisan reveals innocently that he owes about 10 million yen to the gang. Koji asks what he wants, and the warrior responds that he is there precisely to order a very special piece of equipment. The artisan lowers his head, discouraged, and warns that fulfilling that task will be impossible due to the problems with the guild. Suddenly, the young artisan starts trembling with dread upon noticing that the terrible gang of collectors has just returned to the workshop. The henchmen enter the workshop shouting, led by the group boss, who commands the extortion operations on the commercial street. The lone shark who took the punch points desperately at the protagonist, shouting to his boss that was the man who assaulted him. The henchmen surround the workshop entrance, while the injured henchman accuses the hero of interfering in the guild's business. The boss of the lone sharks walks with arrogance toward Tenma, questioning who he thinks he is to assault his henchman. The villain in a suit demands explanations and warns that no one messes with his men without suffering the grave consequences in that area. The man tells the protagonist to get lost immediately if he doesn't want to lose his life for interfering where he wasn't called there. Upon facing the mobster up close, Tenma feels a strong sense of familiarity and tries to remember where he has seen him before. He activates his special memory search skill at level 10 to rummage through his memories of the destroyed future. He recalls that Master Sengoku himself delivered a special medal to the mobster to buy his organization's loyalty. With his memory totally recovered, the hero gives a discreet smile and draws his cell phone to make a quick call. The villain in a suit tells the hero to stop the nonsense, but goes silent upon noticing the boy's total calm and confidence before his gang. Tenma initiates the phone call and asks calmly for the person on the other end of the line to help him solve a small problem. The boss of the collectors stares at the hero with disdain, thinking that the call is nothing more than a useless bluff attempt by the hunter. He mocks the young man's attitude, but the protagonist extends the device toward the mobster extremely calmly. With total disdain, the hero hands over the phone, warning the gang leader that a very important person wants to speak to him now. Quite irritated, the monster takes the cell phone, grumbling that is nothing more than a big waste of time in the middle of work. The villain answers the phone reluctantly but becomes completely paralyzed with dread upon hearing Master Sengoku's calm voice. Sweating cold and stuttering from extreme nervousness, the boss agrees quickly with all the orders he receives over the device. Desperate, the monster shouts, ordering his henchmen to release the young blacksmith immediately and lower their combat weapons. The villain returns the cell phone, bowing and asks for 1,000 apologies, saying he would have acted differently if he knew about his connection. He orders them to bring the stone hammer that was kept, and he delivers the old object directly into Tenma's hands. The hero takes the worn-out tool and asks, smiling at the boss, if that object was really the blacksmith's valuable treasure. He reaches into his pocket and draws the small vial containing the divine potion he won as a reward upon opening the rare chest. The hero knows that only a few drops of unicorn blood will be necessary to awaken the weapon's true strength. With great care, the young man pours the magic liquid over the hammer's stone structure, starting the awakening ritual. The stone hammer starts to glow intensely with red energy, returning to its original Daedalus form. Tenma holds the imposing metal tool that emanates incredible magical power after the divine restoration process. The young artisan widens his eyes, becoming completely amazed to see his treasure back to life before him. Koji becomes immensely confused and asks the protagonist the real reason why he did that for him. The hero lifts the tool and remembers that the boy's total debt to the terrible organization is 10 million yen. He explains, laughing, that he paid all of his debt and took the hammer as payment, which means the item is now his. Desperate, the artisan implores, saying he will do anything as long as he allows him, just to hold the hammer in the workshop. Tenma gives a malicious side smirk and hides the tool behind his back, pretending to think about the matter. He proposes that the blacksmith sign an official contract to work as his subordinate in exchange for the use of the tool. Without hesitating for even a second, the boy takes the paper from the hero's hands, accepting the proposal with total desperation. Koji signs the document incredibly quickly and desperately, hitting his stamp on the wooden table. The protagonist is scared by the absurd speed and the relentless determination of the boy to get the weapon. The young man cries with joy upon hugging his beloved hammer, finally ready to return to work with full force there. Suddenly, the guild leader crosses his arms and shouts, warning Koji not to forget the contract he has with the gang. The villain demands that he start forging the ordered weapons immediately since he recovered his work tools. Koji holds the hammer tightly over the anvil, trembling with fear of the strong pressure imposed by the dangerous guild leader. Quite scared, the blacksmith asks what he should do now, and the monster orders, furious, that he start producing soon. The artisan warns that he needs a very large C-level mana crystal, leaving the guild leader extremely irritated. The villain approaches, furious, saying that the deliveries are delayed and that they run the risk of losing possession of the portal. Koji reinforces that the mana crystal needs to be huge, and the lone shark holds his head, complaining of the strong headache. Tenma interferes in the conversation, asking if the portal is sea level, and the leader confirms, frustrated by the group's delay. The protagonist offers to provide support in the invasion, and the mobster wants to know the boy's current hunter rank. With total tranquility, the hero crosses his arms and lies, saying that his current combat level is only level D. Shortly after, the guild leader holds his sword and his wooden shield, waiting for the combat to start on the green plain. The villain observes the open field, thoughtful, remembering that he is also a D-rank hunter, but that he possesses quite a bit of strength. He becomes completely shocked to see a gigantic pile of monsters defeated, scattered across the green ground of the plain. The man trembles with dread upon seeing Tenma holding a sword wrapped in blue flames and wonders who he really is. The man reminds himself that he is also a rank D hunter to try and calm down while observing the situation. He is shocked to see the trail of monsters, defeated by the young man standing just ahead. Tsukashiro holds his glowing sword, leaving his ally wondering if he did all of that by himself. Suddenly, a goblin appears, screaming and jumping toward the man in an extremely aggressive manner. The hunter manages to block the enemy's attack using his wooden shield while letting out a groan of pain. The green creature doesn't give up and lunges forward again with its weapon, ready to strike another dangerous blow. The man complains in frustration while struggling with all his might to hold back the pressure of the monster's blade. With a quick move, he manages to counterattack and pierces the goblin's chest with his iron sword. The monster screams in pain and falls dead to the ground, scattering green blood across the grass of the battlefield. Gasping for air, the hunter realizes that he had to use all his strength just to defeat a single goblin. Meanwhile, Tsukashiro continues slicing through his adversaries with extreme ease, using his glowing powers. The sweaty man acknowledges that the young man truly lives up to his fame for being a direct acquaintance of Sengoku. The scene shifts to the Mochizuki workshop, where smoke rises from the large chimneys of the region's industries. The young blacksmith becomes extremely excited upon receiving the large, glowing red gem that they brought. The hunter crosses his arms and says it would be a shame if he couldn't create something good with that material. Without wasting time, the blacksmith begins hammering the glowing gem on the anvil with total dedication. The two stand there watching the young man work with great focus, as he ignored them completely before starting. Tsukashiro decides to approach slowly and apologizes for interrupting the blacksmith's focused work. He hands over a piece of paper and asks if it would be possible to create armor with those specific stats he desires. The blacksmith holds the paper and sincerely thanks him, explaining he couldn't speak properly before due to his focus. He bows, promising to create the accessory accessories exactly as requested using the best of his skills. Tsukishiro smiles and reaches out his hand, saying he hopes to have many more successful business dealings in the future. The two shake hands cordially, while the blacksmith states that the pleasure of working with him is all his. Night falls at Tsukishiro Tenma's residence, where the lights from the apartment building windows shine. The young man is holding his phone, observing a mysterious image of mountains on the device's screen. Sitting at the kitchen table, he has dinner calmly while scrolling through options on an invisible technological menu. Tsukishiro sees that he has accumulated enough points to finally buy the talent acquisition potion from the shop. Knowing very well how effective the items in that shop are, he decides to acquire the potion with great anticipation. The young man holds the glowing blue vial, which promises to reverse causality to make him learn new skills. He wonders if he will learn something new just by drinking the liquid, and downs the contents in a single gulp. The young man grimaces in disgust, complaining about the horrible taste of that mysterious drink he just took. A small, red, star-shaped creature appears, glowing at the mouth of the vial right afterward. Tsukishiro stands up, confused, trying to understand where that little glowing thing is trying to lead him. The star floats above the dining table, while the protagonist watches it with great curiosity. Suddenly, a gigantic and violent red light begins to expand from inside the small, glowing being. The creature grows absurdly, transforming into a giant star right in the middle of his kitchen. The giant monster opens a huge, glowing mouth right in front of the young man, who cannot react in time. The star swallows Tsukishiro in one go while he lets out a desperate scream of terror as he is consumed. The young man begins to fall through a dark abyss. Surrounded by extremely frightening red energy, he continues plummeting through the endless void while screaming desperately, not knowing what will happen. The young man finally hits the ground of a mysterious location and lies there next to his combat sword. He stands up, dizzy and quite confused, trying to figure out what kind of bizarre place he ended up in. System screens appear floating and notify him that his compatibility has been successfully evaluated for the test. A red warning appears, revealing that he has entered a survival test, where failure means death. Tsukishiro becomes worried upon seeing that his probability of dying in that challenge is more than 50%. The system announces that the test will begin, and a large curtain of dust rises on the horizon of the setting. Behind the gray smoke, it is possible to see a glowing yellow eye focused directly on the protagonist. A giant wooden dummy emerges, cracking the stone floor, and prepares to initiate the deadly combat. The wooden opponent closes its rigid fists, demonstrating that is ready to attack the young man without mercy. The creature lunges forward at incredible speed toward Tsukishiro to deliver the first punch of the test. The wooden dummy's swift attack grazes and creates a gigantic trail of dust across the battle scene. Tsukishiro manages to dodge by a very narrow margin and falls among the rebel, breathing heavily. The young man complains in annoyance at the situation and tries to catch his breath. Surprised by the adversary's insane speed, the opponent continues moving too fast, leaving several glowing attack lines drawn in the air. The wooden monster lands heavily, cracking the ground, and prepares to deliver another powerful punch. The enemy strikes at the speed of light, looking like a golden blur crossing the destroyed training field. Tsukishiro tries to counterattack using his single line cut, but the impact only creates sparks on its resistant body. The young man is completely shocked to realize that his best physical attack had no effect on the opponent. The dummy takes advantage of the opening and lands a violent punch that throws the protagonist against the stone walls. Without giving him time to react, the adversary continues delivering a brutal sequence of fast punches against the young man. Even while being hit non-stop, the system notifies him that his resistance ability is accumulating a lot of experience. Tsukishiro endures the pressure and manages to level up his resistance by blocking the adversary's heavy fist. The system reveals that the damage taken was reduced and warns that the next phase of the bizarre challenge is about to begin. The young man sighs with relief upon noticing that the dummy finally stopped attacking, but remains tense due to the system's warning. He realizes the challenge changed phases at the exact moment his defensive ability reached its maximum level. Suddenly, several monstrous goblin claws begin to break the stone walls of the setting around him. An entire army of goblins emerges, running from the shadows, leaving the protagonist surprised by the test brutality. Tsukishiro knows he needs to win to survive and advances against the pack, holding his glowing magic sword. The system tries to analyze the user's talent, while the young man slices the first monsters with rapid movements. He remembers he never had any natural talent, and that everything he achieved until now was the result of his hard work. A terrifying red aura is activated by the system, causing the goblins to become paralyzed with fear. With another technique, he instantly changes his weapon to a blue spear and advances, tearing through the enemies in his path. He recalls all the times he was humiliated in the past by people who called him untalented trash. The young man remembers being told that effort was a privilege exclusive to people born with natural gifts. He sheds tears as he remembers everything he ended up losing in his previous life simply for not having talent. Determined to protect everything this time, he concentrates his blue energy to deliver a definitive cut. A devastating energy cut crosses the scene and eliminates dozens of enemies at once with extreme ease. Tsukishiro stands in the middle of all that carnage, surrounded by red dust and defeated bodies. He manages to level up his intimidation skill, leaving the last surviving goblin trembling with fear. Without showing any mercy, the protagonist advances quickly and eliminates the last monster with a precise blow. The young man falls exhausted to the stone floor, while the system announces the end of the test and begins to calculate his rewards. The system reveals that he acquired a new integrated maximum level skill, leaving the protagonist very curious. He reads the blue screen that shows a large increase in the gain rate of normal skills and the chance of obtaining rare gifts. Tsukishiro smiles, satisfied to realize that this is the true hidden power behind the causality reversing potion. Suddenly, a red light appears and transports him back to his kitchen floor next to his untouched dinner. He lies on the floor, incredulous at having managed to level up his fundamental skills so quickly. The young man picks up his phone to check the time, wondering if the test lasted more than an hour in that strange place. He is shocked to look at the device's screen and realize that time in the real world simply did not advance at all. His eyes widen in surprise as he processes the fact that time stood frozen while he was fighting. He sits up quickly on the floor, realizing that the special effects of that mysterious potion have not yet ended. Tsukishiro looks toward the corner of his house's hallway and spots the small, glowing red star floating in the air. The glowing being continues floating and seems to be waiting for the young man to stand up and follow it again. Suddenly, the wall intercom starts ringing, broadcasting an urgent warning about a portal invasion in the region. The alert asks for all residents of the residential area to seek shelter immediately in underground locations. The young man rushes out of his apartment, understanding that the small star is guiding him directly into danger. Upon reaching the street, he spots a gigantic purple portal glowing in the night sky, while the star guides him closely. Several monstrous and gigantic beasts begin to emerge from inside the portal, causing total chaos and panic in the streets. Other hunters are already on the scene, fighting desperately to prevent the monsters from pushing past the defenses. Tsukishiro ignores the confusion and runs, following the red star that seems to be leading him to a specific point. He runs toward a large explosion of blue energy on the street, ready to enter combat with his sword. A very famous and respected hunter from the Silver Wing Guild, named Yuki Shurgan, appears suddenly on the scene. Tsukishiro runs up to her, and the two young women recognize him immediately, surprised by his quick presence. Yuki remembers with a smile that they had agreed to go out to eat, while her sister observes him suspiciously. Suddenly, a huge explosion occurs right on the street, scaring people and making everyone seek cover quickly. A giant and very powerful fire monster emerges from the portal, unleashing intense flames against the city's defenses. Yuki draws her mystic bow and warns that formal introductions must wait until after they defeat that beast. The hunter jumps into the air with agility and fires 3 gigantic, glowing magic arrows in the direction of the danger. The shots hit the large monster squarely, causing an energy explosion that helps contain the enemy's advance. The young Manhwa tells Tsukishiro to focus on eliminating the weaker monsters while her sister takes care of the stronger ones. She is a bit confused, not noticing that the young man's small guide star is floating right above her head. The young man notices the star's position and begins to wonder if the item wants him to help the young hunter in combat. One of the allies is hit by a fierce monster and screams in pain as he is thrown brutally against the street pavement. The poor hunter falls on his back, severely injured, while the monsters prepare to finish the cowardly attack against him. He begs for help on the ground, and the small star glows, floating in his direction, indicating what must be done. At the last second, Tsukishiro blocks the enemy's mortal attack with his sword and protects the fallen ally's life. The young man manages to drag the injured person away, just in time to avoid being caught by a large wave of heat. The system notifies him that he has activated spatial movement and has begun to quickly learn a new rescue technique. He reaches the maximum level in the rescue skill and discovers that he can now slightly heal the people he saves. The green ally is very moved and thankful as he feels his serious wounds being healed by the young man's new magic. Manhwa approaches and says the monster is too strong for him, bragging about having risen to rank B the day before. Tsukishiro thanks her for her concern with sympathy and states that even though he is only rank D, he will manage fine in the fight. New flame beasts emerge from the portal, running at high speed and roaring fiercely at the defenders in the street. The hunter prepares her spheres of magic energy and warns that rank D hunters should only focus on providing support. She gets a huge fright seeing the young man pass right by her like lightning without hesitating for a second. Tsukishiro runs straight into the curtain of fire created by the enemy attacks, advancing without showing any fear. He follows the small guide star's implicit advice and decides to cross the flames instead of trying to dodge them. Manhwa screams desperately, begging the young man to wait, but he completely ignores the warning and enters the fire. While running through the intense heat, the system notifies him that his resistance to the fire element is rising very fast. The young man reaches level 10 in fire resistance and notices with joy that the flames no longer cause any damage to him. Tsukishiro uses his high-speed horizontal cut and slices several monsters that were hiding in the middle of the fire. The young man jumps very high over a huge beast, preparing his sword to deliver another devastating attack. With a precise movement, he delivers a downward blow, tearing through the body of the monster trying to attack him. The creature screams in pain as its body is split in half by the immense force of the protagonist's mystic attack. He activates his weapon, swapping ability, noticing that the creatures from that portal are very resistant. Tsukishiro prepares his new glowing spear, noticing that more gigantic monsters are running in his direction. The young man starts attacking with rapid movements, and the system notifies him that he is learning the art of the spear quickly. He continues spinning his mystic weapon nonstop, defeating dozens of enemies while raising the level of his technique. Upon eliminating the last threat, the system confirms that his spear technique has reached its maximum level of effectiveness. Manhwa appears shocked and asks when he learned to use a spear, but the young man replies that it was just now. The ally screams desperately, warning that another immense horde of monsters is running toward them all at once. Dozens of fierce creatures run toward the group, roaring loudly and promising to destroy everything they see ahead. Suddenly, a true rain of pink arrows crosses the sky, falling like meteors toward the beasts. The magic projectiles explode on the ground and eliminate all the threats at once, saving the group from the imminent danger. The devastating impact completely clears the street, leaving only smoke and the remains of the destroyed creatures on the ground. Yuki Shirogane appears imposingly, holding her glowing bow, surrounded by an impressive mystic combat aura. Tsukishiro observes her with admiration, acknowledging that the young woman is truly one of the most talented hunters in the country. She announces that she will enter the portal to eliminate the boss and asks the other hunters to clear the external area. Yuki surprises everyone by asking for her sister and Tsukishiro to accompany her in the invasion, leaving Manhwa very confused. The young man places his hand on the scared girl's shoulder and says with a kind smile for them to go with her sister. She turns completely red with embarrassment, while the young man realizes he has no choice but to follow the star. The three hunters finally enter the portal, and Yuki says that now they have a calm moment to talk properly. The young leader extends her hand with sympathy and says she has already heard many compliments about Tsukishiro coming from her own sister. The young man shakes her hand, thinking she is the most reliable hero of all and wondering if that is the effect of the potion. A red warning from the system appears in front of them, revealing that the group has just entered the territory of the demons. The alert warns that a curse is active, preventing any creature from being able to recover inside that portal. Tsukishiro becomes extremely worried and tries to understand the real meaning of the appearance of that terrible demonic race. Yuki becomes apprehensive, wondering if that bizarre monster from the last rift is also hidden somewhere around there. The system screens make it clear that those dangerous terms are the real proof that a strong demon is nearby. The young man knows there is a demonic subordinate lurking who made a pact to use a fraction of forbidden power. The leader decides that she will advance alone to explore the rift while ordering the other two to guard the portal exit. Tsukishiro explains seriously that the healing restriction prevents the recovery of mana, breath, and mental strength. Yuki decides to test her energy by concentrating glowing magic flames in the palm of her hand to verify the anomaly. Manhwa looks frightened at her own blue energy gauge, realizing that the ally was indeed right. The archer thanks the young man for his valuable warning and begins preparing to head toward the creature's lair. The younger sister tries to prevent her from going alone, but the warrior shoots off at high speed, kicking up a lot of dust. The young man tries to calm her down, saying the strength of a rank S is insane, but she shouts that she only cares about her sister. Tsukishiro suddenly hears a strange noise coming from the scene and narrows his eyes, focused on discovering the origin. He turns slowly upon spotting two small, glowing red spheres floating mysteriously in the desert. The young man activates his mystic perception ability at its maximum level, but cannot sense any presence near there. Manhwa asks, curious, if there is something hidden there in front, while the young man draws his sword, sensing danger. Trusting his instinct, Tsukishiro throws his glowing blue energy spear toward the silent cliff. The attack hits an invisible enemy squarely, which lets out a high-pitched scream of pain, while being revealed by the strong impact. A mysterious book falls to the dirt ground, kicking up dust the moment the hidden opponent loses its disguise. The hunter is paralyzed with shock to see that there really was someone hidden, watching the two the entire time. Tsukishiro focuses his glowing gaze toward the smoke to try to identify the danger level of the new adversary. The system notifies him that he is acquiring a new discernment skill that evolves very fast in his mind. A giant golden goblin wearing heavy armor emerges before them, holding its own chest with an expression of pain. The frightening creature stares at the young man with glowing yellow eyes and asks, surprised, how the human managed to discover it. Manhwa is scared to see a goblin that can speak the human language, and the young man tries to understand if it is of another species. The golden monster scratches its head, complaining about its bad luck, and introduces itself formally as the feared golden goblin Zabel.